The forest doesn't care if you're dying. Eleanor Stevenson learned that truth as she stumbled through the undergrowth, one arm clutched around her shattered ribs, the other cradling a tiny wolf cub against her chest. Blood soaked through her torn shirt, hers, not the pup's. Thank the gods, and every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. But she kept moving. Behind her, the snarls grew closer. Louder. More frenzied. 3 rogues, maybe 4. She'd stopped counting after the first one's claws had ripped through her side. The cub whimpered, and Eleanor pressed her lips to his tiny head, her voice barely a rasp. Shh, baby. Almost there. Almost safe. A lie. She had no idea where there was. No idea if safety even existed anymore. The winter storm matched her desperation. Ice-slicked branches clawed at her face. Wind screamed through the pines like a living thing, and the snow fell so thick she could barely see 3 feet ahead. Her wolf stirred beneath her skin, begging to be released, to fight, to run faster. But Eleanor couldn't shift. Not with the cub. Not when her wolf was wrong. She'd known she was different since her first shift at 13. Where other wolves emerged sleek and powerful in browns and grays, Eleanor's wolf had blazed silver-white as moonlight, with eyes that burned like molten mercury. Beautiful, terrifying, unnatural. The Clearwater Pack had called her cursed. An abomination. They'd tolerated her because her parents had been loyal, because she'd kept her head down, because she'd made herself small and useful and invisible. Until tonight. Until she'd found this cub abandoned in the snow, his mother's body cooling beside him, throat torn out by rogues. Until she'd scooped him up without thinking, and the rogues had caught her scent. Until she'd made the choice that damned her. She'd chosen the innocent over her own survival. Her foot caught on a root, and she went down hard. Pain exploded through her ribs, white-hot, blinding. The cub tumbled from her arms, landing in the snow with a frightened yelp. No. Eleanor reached for him, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Blood pooled beneath her, turning the pristine snow crimson. Her vision swam. The rogues burst through the trees. 4 of them. Shifted. Eyes wild with bloodlust and something worse, hunger. Not for food. For destruction. The largest one, a mangy gray wolf with half his ear missing, stalked toward the cub, his lips peeled back, revealing yellow fangs. Something inside Eleanor snapped. Not her body that was already broken. Not her spirit that had fractured years ago when her pack had looked at her like she was a monster. No. This was deeper. Older. A power that had slumbered in her bones since birth, waiting for the moment she had nothing left to lose. Don't touch him. Her voice came out wrong, layered, resonant, like thunder rolling across mountains. Silver light exploded from her skin. The rogues skidded back, snarling in confusion. Eleanor didn't understand it either. She could feel the power crackling through her veins like liquid starlight, burning away the pain, the fear, everything except one singular purpose: protect the innocent. She dragged herself to her knees, placing her body between the rogues and the cub. Her hands hit the snow, and where her palms touched, silver flames erupted, cold fire that didn't burn but pulsed with ancient energy. What the hell? One of the rogues shifted back to human form. A scarred man with wild eyes. She's one of them. One of the marked. Impossible. The gray wolf snarled, also shifting. They're extinct. Dead for 200 years. Does she look dead to you? Eleanor had no idea what they were talking about. The marked? She'd never heard that term. But the power flooding through her felt both foreign and familiar. Like remembering a dream from childhood. The gray wolf, clearly the leader, bared his teeth. Marked or not, she's dying. Kill her. Take the cub. The Alpha King will pay good money for Blackwater bloodline. Alpha King? Eleanor's heart lurched. The cub wasn't just any wolf. He was royalty. And she'd just signed her death warrant saving him. The rogues advanced as one, confident now that her moment of power had faded. And they were right. The silver flames sputtered and died, leaving Eleanor gasping, her body remembering every wound, every broken bone. She had nothing left. No strength. No magic. No hope. But she had her choice. Eleanor spread her arms wide, making herself as large as possible, shielding the cub completely. You'll have to go through me. The gray wolf laughed, a sound like grinding stone. That's the idea, sweetheart. He lunged. Eleanor closed her eyes, bracing for death. It didn't come. Instead, the forest went silent. Completely, utterly silent. Even the wind died. Then a growl rolled through the trees, low, primal, saturated with power that made Eleanor's wolf whimper and press flat in submission. Not fear. Recognition. Like her wolf knew that sound, had been waiting for it her entire life. The rogues froze. "Oh gods," one whispered. That's not possible. He never leaves the Northern Territories." "Run!" the gray wolf screamed. But it was too late. He emerged from the storm like a shadow-given form, a massive black wolf, easily twice the size of the rogues, with eyes that glowed amber gold in the darkness. His fur seemed to absorb the light, making him look less like an animal and more like a piece of the night itself had taken shape and fury. Eleanor had never seen anything so terrifying, or so beautiful. The black wolf didn't hesitate. He was on the gray rogue in seconds, jaws closing around the man's throat before he could shift. The sound of bones snapping echoed through the trees. The other 3 rogues scattered, but 2 more wolves materialized from the storm, one rust-colored, one pale gray, cutting off their escape. The fight was swift and brutal. Eleanor could only watch, frozen, as the massive black wolf and his companions dismantled the rogues with practiced efficiency. It was over in less than a minute. The black wolf stood over the gray rogue's body, blood dripping from his muzzle. Then those burning amber eyes locked onto Eleanor. Her breath caught. He padded toward her slowly, each step deliberate, giving her time to run, as if she could, as if her body had anything left to give. When he was 3 feet away, he shifted. Eleanor had seen plenty of shifts in her life, but nothing like this. His was seamless, effortless, one moment a beast, the next a man kneeling in the snow, completely unbothered by the cold despite his nakedness. And what a man. He was built like violence, barely contained broad shoulders, muscled arms covered in scars, a face too sharp to be handsome but compelling in its intensity. His black hair was long enough to brush his shoulders, and those amber eyes, gods, they pinned her in place like she was a butterfly under glass. But it was his presence that truly stole her breath. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge, not the wild, chaotic energy of the rogues, but something controlled, ancient, absolute. This was an alpha. Not just any alpha. The Alpha King the rogues had mentioned. "You're hurt." His voice was deep, rough, edged with something Eleanor couldn't identify. Concern? Anger? Both? She tried to speak, but only managed a weak cough that brought blood to her lips. His jaw tightened. "Javier, shift. Give me your shirt." One of the other wolves, the rust-colored one, shifted into a lean man with kind eyes and immediately stripped off the shirt that had appeared with his shift. Alpha King took it without looking and moved closer to Eleanor. "I'm going to touch you," he said quietly. "To stop the bleeding, don't fight me." Eleanor wanted to laugh. Fight him? She could barely keep her eyes open. He pressed the shirt to her side, and she hissed at the pressure. His hands were surprisingly gentle for someone who'd just ripped out a man's throat. "The cub," Eleanor gasped. "Is he safe?" Alpha King's eyes flicked to where the tiny wolf pup had curled into a ball, shivering but alive. "You protected him. Had to." The words came out slurred. "He's innocent. Just a baby." Something flickered across the Alpha King's face, surprise. Maybe. Or recognition. "Do you know who he is? Does it matter?" Eleanor's vision was graying at the edges. "He needed help. That's all I needed to know. You were willing to die for a stranger's child. Better than living as a coward." Eleanor tried to focus on his face, but everything was getting fuzzy. "Besides, already dead. Clearwater Pack. They'll kill me for this. For the power. For being wrong." "You're not wrong." His voice dropped, became almost tender. "You're marked. One of the ancient bloodline. I thought your line was extinct. Don't know what that means." Eleanor's head lolled forward. "Don't care. Just promise me the cub lives. Please." Strong hands cupped her face, lifting her head. Alpha King's amber eyes burned into hers, and for a moment, Eleanor forgot about the pain, the cold, the fact that she was dying in the snow. "Look at me," he commanded, and Eleanor couldn't have looked away if she tried. "You're not dying tonight. Do you understand? I won't allow it. Not your choice. Everything in these territories is my choice. And I choose you living." His thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away blood or tears, she wasn't sure which. "You're brave. Foolish, but brave. The world needs more wolves willing to protect the innocent at any cost." "Why do you care?" The question came out barely a whisper. His answer made no sense. Because I've been looking for you for 3 years. Before Eleanor could process that impossible statement, he lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing. The movement jostled her broken ribs, and she cried out, I know. I'm sorry. But we need to move. More rogues might come. He looked at his companions. Javier, carry the pup. Glenn, scout ahead. We're taking them to Blackridge. Your Majesty, the pale gray wolf now, a silver-haired man said carefully. The council won't approve bringing an unknown wolf to. I don't recall asking for approval. Alpha King's voice went cold. Absolute. She saved my nephew's life. She bleeds for my bloodline. That makes her mine to protect. Anyone who objects can take it up with me personally. The weight of that declaration settled over Eleanor like a blanket. His to protect. His. She should have been terrified. Should have questioned what that meant, what he wanted, why he claimed to have been searching for her. But consciousness was slipping away, dragging her down into darkness, and all Eleanor could think was that his arms felt safe, that for the first time in her life, someone had called her brave instead of cursed. That maybe, just maybe, she wasn't going to die alone in the snow after all. Stay with me, Alpha King murmured against her hair as he carried her through the storm. Just a little longer. I've got you. And before the darkness claimed her completely, Eleanor did something she hadn't done in years. She believed him. The world came back in pieces. First, warmth. Real warmth, not the hypothermic numbness of dying in snow. Eleanor could feel it seeping into her bones, chasing away the cold that had become so familiar she'd forgotten what comfort felt like. Second, softness. She was lying on something that wasn't frozen, ground a bed. Maybe, with blankets that smelled like pine and wood smoke and something else. Something wild and masculine that made her wolf stir with interest. Third, pain. Oh gods, the pain. Her ribs were on fire. Her side felt like someone had filleted her open. And every muscle in her body screamed in protest when she tried to move. Don't. A hand pressed gently on her shoulder, not restraining, just steadying. You'll tear the stitches. Eleanor's eyes flew open. She was in a bedroom large, rustic, with exposed wooden beams and a stone fireplace crackling with flames. Warm light pooled across hand-carved furniture and thick furs. Through a massive window, she could see snow still falling, but here, she was safe, warm, protected. And sitting in a chair beside her bed, watching her with those impossible amber eyes, was the Alpha King. He dressed black shirt, dark pants, boots, but somehow looked even more dangerous clothed than he had naked in the snow. His presence filled the room, made it feel smaller, made Eleanor hyper-aware of how vulnerable she was. The cub? Her voice came out hoarse, raspy. Sleeping. Javier's mate is looking after him. Alpha King leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He's unharmed, thanks to you. A few bruises, mild hypothermia, but he'll recover fully. Relief flooded through Eleanor so intensely that tears pricked her eyes. Good. That's good. You nearly died saving him. He's a child. He's not your child. Doesn't matter. Eleanor met his gaze steadily, despite the vulnerability of being in his bed, in his territory, at his mercy. Would you have left him to die? Something like respect flickered across his face. No. Then you understand. A long silence stretched between them. Alpha King studied her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve, his eyes tracking over her face with an intensity that made Eleanor want to squirm. Or maybe lean closer. She wasn't sure which instinct was more dangerous. What's your name? He finally asked. Eleanor. Eleanor Stevenson. Eleanor. He said it slowly, like he was tasting the syllables. I'm Russ Mercer, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, leader of Blackridge Pack. Russ. The name fit him strong, simple, solid as stone. Where am I? My home. The main house in Blackridge Territory. He gestured vaguely toward the window. About 40 miles from where I found you. 40 miles from Clearwater Lands. 40 miles from everything she'd known. Everyone who'd rejected her. They'll come for me, Eleanor said quietly. My pack. They'll want me back too. She stopped, unsure how much to reveal. To punish you? Russ's voice went flat, dangerous. For having the audacity to be powerful? Eleanor flinched. How did you? I saw it. The silver flames. The ancient power. He leaned back, but his eyes never left hers. You're marked, Eleanor. One of the Silver Moon bloodline. I'd recognize that power anywhere. I don't know what that means. It means you're descended from the original wolves, the ones who walked between worlds, who could call on the moon's power directly. They were the first alphas, the most powerful beings in our history. Russ's voice took on an edge of reverence. And they were hunted to extinction 2 centuries ago by wolves who feared their power. The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Extinct? Or so everyone believed. His amber eyes burned into hers. Until 3 years ago, when I felt a pulse of Silvermoon power during the winter solstice. Distant, untrained, but unmistakable. I've been searching every territory, following every rumor, trying to find the source. Why? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Eleanor wasn't ready to examine. Russ stood abruptly, moving to the fireplace. The flames cast his profile in sharp relief, the strong line of his jaw, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the tension in his shoulders. Because of a promise I made, he said finally, and because the old prophecies spoke of the marked returning in our darkest hour, when the packs would be divided, when rogues would rise, when we'd need the ancient power to survive. That sounds like a fairy tale, does it? He turned back to her, and the look on his face made her breath catch. 3 months ago, 5 packs reported coordinated rogue attacks, not random violence, organized raids, strategic targets, someone leading them. 2 weeks ago, they hit a nursery, killed 4 pups, before we could stop them. Horror washed through Eleanor. Who would? Someone who wants to destabilize the packs. Someone with resources and intelligence and a vendetta. Russ's hands clenched into fists. My nephew, the cub you saved, was their next target. They killed his mother, my sister, and were going to use him as leverage to force the council's hand. I'm sorry. The words felt inadequate. About your sister. Pain flickered across his face, there and gone in a heartbeat. So am I. Eleanor wanted to ask more about his sister, about the rogues, about this prophecy he'd mentioned, but exhaustion was pulling at her, making her eyelids heavy. Russ must have noticed, because his expression softened slightly. Sleep, we can talk more when you're healed. My pack won't touch you here. You're under my protection now. He said it with such absolute certainty that Eleanor almost believed him. No one enters Blackridge territory without my permission. You're safe, Eleanor. For the first time in a long time, you're truly safe. She wanted to argue. Wanted to point out that she couldn't stay here, couldn't impose on an Alpha King, couldn't trust that this protection wouldn't come with a price she couldn't afford to pay. But her body had other ideas. The warmth, the softness, the bone-deep exhaustion, it all conspired against her. Why are you helping me? She whispered, fighting to keep her eyes open. Russ moved back to the chair beside her bed, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes. Because you're extraordinary, Eleanor Stevenson. And you don't even know it yet. His hand covered hers, large, warm, calloused. Sleep now. I'll be here when you wake. You don't have to. I know. I want to. And there was something in his voice, some thread of vulnerability beneath the power, that made Eleanor's heart stutter in her chest. She let her eyes close, let the darkness pull her under, and the last thing she felt was Russ's thumb tracing gentle circles on the back of her hand. For the first time in her life, Eleanor Stevenson fell asleep, feeling protected instead of hunted. She just hoped it wasn't another cruel dream that would shatter with the dawn. Chapter 2. The King Who Saved Her. Eleanor woke to voices low, tense, argumentative, absolutely reckless. Your Majesty. Bringing an unknown wolf into the heart of our territory. She's marked, Wallace. That makes her invaluable. If she's actually marked, we have only your word, and forgive me for saying so, but you've been obsessed with finding Silvermoon descendants for years. What if this is just another powerful wolf and you're seeing what you want to see? Eleanor kept her eyes closed, her breathing steady. Years of making herself invisible in Clearwater had taught her the value of listening before revealing you were awake. I know what I saw. Russ's voice was cold steel. The silver flames don't lie, Wallace. Neither does my wolf's response to her. A pause. Heavy with implication. Your wolf's response? The other man, Wallace, sounded wary now. What exactly does that mean? It means my wolf recognized her, claimed her before I even knew her name. Russ's voice dropped lower, almost a growl. So yes, she stays. Under my protection. Non-negotiable. The council will demand answers. They'll want her tested, questioned, possibly. The council will do exactly as I say, or they can challenge me for the title. The threat in those words was unmistakable. Are we clear? Crystal, Your Majesty. Footsteps retreated, a door closed, then silence. Eleanor counted to 30 before risking opening her eyes. Russ stood at the window, his back to her, tension radiating from every line of his body. Dawnlight filtered through the glass, catching in his black hair, turning it almost blue. He'd rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle, and marked with scars the kind that came from battle, from survival, from a life lived on the edge of violence. You can stop pretending to be asleep now, he said without turning around. Eleanor's cheeks heated. How did you? Your heartbeat changed. And your breathing. He glanced over his shoulder, a slight smile playing at his lips. I'm an Alpha King, Eleanor. I notice things. She pushed herself up to sitting, wincing as her ribs protested. Someone had changed her clothes. She now wore a soft cotton shirt that was far too large, probably Russ's, and her wounds had been carefully bandaged. How long was I asleep? 16 hours. The healer said you'd need at least 3 days of rest to recover fully. He turned to face her, leaning against the windowsill. But knowing what I've learned about you, I suspect you'll try to leave within 24 hours. I shouldn't be here. Where should you be? Back with the pack that called you cursed. Back with wolves who'd punish you for having the audacity to be powerful. His amber eyes pinned her in place. Or maybe you'd prefer to be dead in the snow, frozen, forgotten, having sacrificed everything for a child that wasn't yours. The words were harsh, but his tone wasn't angry. Just frustrated. Like he genuinely couldn't understand why she'd devalue herself so completely. I don't have anywhere else to go, Eleanor admitted quietly. But I won't be a burden. As soon as I'm healed, I'll leave. Find somewhere new. A pack that needs a... She stopped, unsure what she could even offer. What did you call yourself when your own kind rejected you? A healer, Russ suggested. Because Javier told me you were checking the cub for injuries even while you were bleeding out. Or maybe a warrior. Because you stood against 4 rogues with broken ribs and no backup. Or perhaps a leader. Because in that moment, you made a choice that saved an innocent life, and damn the consequences. Eleanor stared at him. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Trying to make me sound heroic, noble. She gestured helplessly. I'm not. I'm wrong, Russ. My wolf is wrong. My power is wrong. I've known it my entire life. The pack knew it. My parents knew it before they died. I'm extraordinary. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, sitting on the edge of her bed, close enough that she could smell him pine and snow, and something wild that made her wolf perk up with interest. Say it, Eleanor. I'm extraordinary. I can't. Say it. His hand cupped her chin, gentle but insistent, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. Because I'm tired of watching you shrink yourself. Tired of hearing you apologize for existing. You are marked. You are powerful. You are brave. And you are exactly what this world needs, even if you don't believe it yet. His touch burned not painfully, but like coming in from the cold and feeling your frozen skin remember what warmth meant. Eleanor's breath caught, trapped somewhere between her lungs and her throat. I don't understand you, she whispered. We're strangers. You don't know anything about me except that I know you threw yourself between rogues and an innocent child without hesitation. I know you bled out protecting someone else's bloodline. I know your power scared you, but you used it anyway when it mattered. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, achingly tender. I know that when I found you dying in the snow, you didn't beg for your own life. You begged for his. Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes. He deserved to live. So do you. 3 words. Simple. Devastating. Because no one had ever said that to her before. Not like this. Not like they meant it down to their bones. Russ. Her voice broke. He pulled back, as if sensing she needed space, but his eyes never left hers. I'm not trying to overwhelm you. I need you to understand that you're safe here. Not just physically. You're safe to be yourself, all of yourself. The power, the silver flames, whatever you've been taught to hide. It's not wrong, Eleanor. It's who you are. And what if who I am is dangerous? Then you'll fit right in. A wry smile touched his lips. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not exactly a cuddly house pet. Despite everything, Eleanor felt her own lips twitch. I noticed. Good. He stood, moving back toward the window, giving her space to breathe. The healer will be back this afternoon to check your wounds. Javier's mate, Addie, We'll bring you food and clean clothes. And if you need anything at all, there's a bell on the nightstand. Ring it, and someone will come. I don't need. I know. You're very self-sufficient and independent and used to taking care of yourself. He glanced back at her. But humor me. Let someone take care of you for once. Before Eleanor could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Come, Russ called. A woman entered, petite, with warm brown skin and kind eyes that immediately found Eleanor. She carried a tray laden with food, and behind her, a small wolf cub padded nervously into the room. Eleanor's heart clenched. The cub, alive, healthy. His silver-gray fur fluffed out from a recent bath, and his blue eyes so human, so aware, locked onto Eleanor with unmistakable recognition. Oh, Eleanor breathed. The cub yipped once, then scrambled across the floor and launched himself onto the bed. He was small enough that he barely jostled her, but Eleanor still gasped at the movement. Russ moved forward, but Eleanor waved him off. The cub was licking her hand frantically, whimpering, trying to burrow under her arm. He's been looking for you, Addie said softly, setting the tray on a side table. Wouldn't settle until we brought him up here. I think he knows you saved him. Eleanor gathered the cub against her chest, careful of her ribs. He was warm and solid and alive, and something in her chest that had been clenched tight for 16 hours finally loosened. Hey, little one, she murmured. You're okay. You're safe now. The cub made a sound that was half whimper, half purr, and settled against her like he'd found exactly where he belonged. Eleanor looked up to find Russ watching her with an expression she couldn't read, intense, almost hungry, but not in a threatening way. More like he was memorizing this moment, burning it into his mind. His name is Drew, Russ said quietly. Drew Mercer, my sister's son. He's 3 years old, too young to shift back on his own yet. I'm so sorry. Eleanor met his eyes. About your sister. He must miss her terribly. Pain flickered across Russ's face, quickly masked. Olivia was. She was the best of us. Kind, strong, fierce when she needed to be. She deserved better than dying alone, protecting her son from monsters. She didn't die alone, Eleanor said firmly. She died knowing she'd kept him safe long enough for help to arrive. That's not nothing, Russ. That's everything. Something in his expression cracked just for a moment, just enough for Eleanor to see the grief underneath the alpha's mask. Then he nodded, once, and turned away. I'll let you eat and rest. Addie will stay if you need anything. Russ, Eleanor didn't know what she wanted to say, only that she couldn't let him leave like this. Thank you. For saving us, for seeing me. He paused at the door, his hand on the frame. You saved him first, Eleanor. I just made sure you both survived the night. His eyes met hers one last time. And I always see you. From the moment I found you bleeding in the snow, I've seen exactly who you are. Then he was gone. And Eleanor was left with Addie's knowing smile, a sleeping cub in her arms, and a heart that beat just a little faster than it should. He's not usually like this, Addie said conversationally, arranging food on the tray. Russ. I mean, he's intense, yes. Protective of the pack, absolutely. But this, she gestured vaguely. This is different. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Addie's smile was gentle, not mocking. But that's okay. You just got here. You're still healing. No need to figure everything out right now. She moved toward the door, then paused. But Eleanor, whatever happened to you before, whatever your old pack told you about yourself, they were wrong. And I think deep down you know it. She left before Eleanor could respond. Eleanor looked down at Drew, who'd fallen asleep against her chest, his little paws twitching with dreams. Then she looked at the tray of food, real food, lovingly prepared. More than she could possibly eat. Then she looked at the room, warm, safe, protected. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Eleanor Stevenson let herself imagine what it might feel like to stop running, to stop hiding, to stop believing she was too wrong to deserve a place in the world. Outside the window, snow continued to fall. But inside, wrapped in borrowed clothes and borrowed warmth, with a sleeping cub in her arms and an alpha king who claimed he'd been searching for her for 3 years, Eleanor felt something she'd thought long dead begin to stir. Hope. Dangerous, fragile, terrifying hope. She was probably going to regret this. Probably going to get hurt. Probably going to discover that this protection came with strings she couldn't afford to pull. But for right now, in this moment, Eleanor let herself rest. And that was enough. Chapter 3. Nightmares and Memories. The nightmare came 3 nights later. Eleanor was back in Clearwater territory, 13 years old again, her body trembling with the first shift. She could feel her bones breaking and reforming, her skin rippling with fur, her senses exploding with new awareness. Her mother's voice tight with fear. Something's wrong. She's not David, look at her. Her father, stepping back. What is she? And then the shift completed, and Eleanor saw herself reflected in her mother's horrified eyes, not brown or gray or even black, silver. Pure, luminous silver, like she'd been carved from moonlight itself. Beautiful. Monstrous. Wrong. The pack had gathered, drawn by the commotion. She remembered their faces' shock, fear, disgust. She remembered the whispers starting immediately, spreading like wildfire. Cursed. Unnatural. The old bloodline. The dangerous one. Alpha Thomas had stepped forward, his expression grave. Eleanor Stevenson. Your wolf is unusual. Until we understand what this means, you are restricted to human form in public spaces. You will not shift unless given explicit permission. Do you understand? She'd been 13, terrified, desperate to belong. She'd said yes. She'd said yes for 12 years. In the dream, the memory shifted, became darker. Her parents' funeral when she was 16, killed in a rogue attack while she'd been locked in her room. Forbidden to fight. Forbidden to help because her power might escalate the situation. She'd begged Alpha Thomas to let her out. Screamed until her throat bled. He'd refused. And her parents had died while she'd clawed at the door, her silver wolf howling inside her mind, trapped, useless, wrong, wrong, wrong. Eleanor, Eleanor, wake up. Hands on her shoulders, gentle but firm. A voice cutting through the nightmare. Low and rough. And real. Eleanor's eyes snapped open. She was back in Russ's guest room. Tangled in sheets. Her face wet with tears. And Russ was there. Kneeling beside the bed. His amber eyes filled with concern. You were screaming, he said quietly. I heard you from down the hall. Eleanor tried to speak, but only managed a choked sob. The grief was fresh again. Raw. Like the funeral had been yesterday instead of 9 years ago. Russ didn't hesitate. He climbed onto the bed and pulled her against his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other wrapped around her waist. His heat surrounded her, solid and real, chasing away the ghosts. Breathe, he murmured against her hair. Just breathe. You're safe. Whatever you saw, it's not here. It can't touch you here. Eleanor pressed her face against his shoulder and let herself break. All the years of holding it together, of making herself small, of swallowing her grief and her rage and her loneliness, it all came pouring out in harsh, ugly sobs that shook her entire body. And Russ held her through it. Didn't tell her to calm down. Didn't try to fix it. Didn't make her feel weak for falling apart. He just held her. Like she was precious. Like her pain mattered. When the storm finally passed, leaving Eleanor exhausted and hollow, she realized Drew had joined them. The cub pressed against her side, whimpering softly in sympathy. Sorry, Eleanor rasped. I didn't mean to wake everyone. Don't apologize. Russ's hand moved in slow circles on her back. Want to talk about it? She should say no. Should pull away, rebuild her walls, go back to being the self-sufficient woman who didn't need anyone. But she was so tired of carrying it alone. My parents, she heard herself say. I dreamed about my parents. About the day they died. Russ's arms tightened fractionally. How old were you? 16. Eleanor's voice sounded distant, disconnected. Rogues attacked during the autumn gathering. My father was a warrior. My mother was a healer. They both fought, trying to protect the pack. And I was locked in my room, forbidden to help, because Alpha Thomas thought my power would make things worse. Locked? Russ's voice went dangerously quiet. He imprisoned you during an attack? He said it was for my own protection, that I was too young, too inexperienced, too unpredictable. Eleanor pulled back enough to look at him. He said if I shifted, if I used my power, I might hurt pack members. That I couldn't control it. That I was dangerous. Were you? Dangerous? I don't know. I never got the chance to find out. Bitter laughter escaped her. I spent 12 years in Clearwater Pack, being told I was a threat. Being watched, restricted, controlled. Every time my wolf pushed to the surface, I had to shove her down. Every time I felt my power rising, I had to suppress it. Because good wolves don't glow silver. Good wolves don't call fire from their hands. Good wolves don't. Good wolves don't what, Eleanor? Russ's thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Don't protect innocent children? Don't stand against overwhelming odds? Don't sacrifice themselves for strangers? Don't exist. The words came out broken. My parents loved me, I think. But they were afraid of me too. I could see it in their eyes every time I shifted. They tried to hide it, but I knew. And after they died, there was no one left who even tried to pretend I belonged. Russ was quiet for a long moment, his hands still moving in those soothing circles on her back. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. My father was afraid of me too. Eleanor looked up, startled. Russ's expression was distant, focused on some memory only he could see. I was born during a blood moon rare, supposedly ominous. My wolf emerged when I was 11, 2 years earlier than normal. And when I shifted for the first time, I was already huge, powerful. My father, the previous Alpha King, looked at me like I was a threat to his throne. His jaw tightened. Turns out he was right to be afraid. I challenged him when I was 17 and won. You killed your own father? No. He yielded. Russ's eyes met hers. But he never forgave me for being stronger than him. For being what he'd always wanted to be but couldn't. He lived another 3 years, bitter and angry, before a heart condition took him. And the last thing he ever said to me was, "You're too powerful to be trusted." Eleanor's heart clenched. Russ. So I understand, Eleanor. What it's like to have the people who should love you most look at you like you're a monster. What it's like to be afraid of your own strength because everyone around you says it's wrong. He cupped her face in both hands, his amber eyes burning into hers. But here's what I learned. The people who fear your power are usually the ones who know they could never match it. And their fear says everything about their weakness and nothing about your worth. That's easy to say when you're an Alpha King. When your power is respected, wanted, valued. Eleanor's voice broke. But I'm broken, Russ. My wolf doesn't feel right. My power scares me. And every time I think about letting it out, really letting it out, I remember Alpha Thomas's voice telling me I'd hurt people. That I was dangerous. You are dangerous. Russ's smile was fierce, proud. You should be dangerous. You have the blood of the original Alphas running through your veins. Your power could probably level a city if you really tried. But dangerous doesn't mean evil, Eleanor. A blade is dangerous. Fire is dangerous. The ocean is dangerous. That doesn't make them wrong, it makes them powerful. And power is only as destructive or protective as the person wielding it. How can you be so sure I won't hurt someone? Because I saw you dying in the snow, and you used your last breath to beg for a child's life. His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones. Because Drew trusts you completely, and children always know. Because when your power erupted, it didn't lash out blindly. It created a barrier between the rogues and an innocent. That's not the action of someone who can't control their strength. That's instinct, Eleanor. Pure, protective instinct. Eleanor wanted to believe him. Gods. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. What if I'm not who you think I am? She whispered. What if the prophecy is wrong, and I'm just a mistake? A wolf who should have died out with the rest of the marked. Then you're the most magnificent mistake I've ever seen. Russ leaned his forehead against hers, close enough that she could feel his breath on her lips. But I don't think you're a mistake. I think you're exactly what you're supposed to be. And I think Clearwater Pack did everything they could to kill your spirit because they knew if you ever truly believed in yourself, you'd be unstoppable. Drew yipped softly, as if in agreement. And despite everything, Eleanor felt a laugh bubble up in her chest. You're very good at speeches, she said. It's the Alpha King thing, comes with the territory. But his smile was soft, genuine. Feeling better? A little. She was. The nightmare's grip had loosened, replaced by something warmer, steadier. Thank you. For this. You didn't have to. Eleanor. He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. I know we've only known each other 3 days. But I need you to understand something. Her heart stuttered. What? When I found you in the snow, my wolf didn't just recognize your power. He recognized you. As in, you specifically. Like he'd been waiting for you his entire life. Russ's voice dropped lower, intimate. Wolves mate for life, Eleanor. And when we find our mate we know. Instantly, Completely. Without question. The air between them went electric. You're saying Eleanor couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't let herself hope for something that impossible. I'm saying my wolf has claimed you. And while I'm trying very hard to give you space, to let you heal and adjust and figure out what you want, it's taking every ounce of control I have not to. He stopped, jaw clenching. Not to make this harder for you than it already is. Eleanor's mind reeled. Mates. He was talking about mates. About the bond that was supposed to be sacred. Permanent. Unbreakable. About choosing her. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't have to say anything. Not now. Russ stood, carefully extracting himself from the bed. I just needed you to know. So when you're ready, if you're ever ready, you'll understand why I can't just let you leave. Why I'll fight anyone who tries to hurt you. Why? He ran a hand through his hair. Frustrated. Why you matter to me in ways I'm probably not explaining well at all. Eleanor sat up, wincing as her still healing ribs protested. Russ, I don't know how to be someone's mate. I don't even know how to be comfortable in my own skin. How can I possibly? You don't have to be anything except yourself. He moved toward the door, then paused. The woman who saved Drew, who stood against rogues with nothing but courage and broken bones, who calls silver fire from her hands and doesn't even realize how extraordinary that is. That woman is exactly who I want, Eleanor. Scars, fears, doubts and all. He left before she could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Eleanor sat in the darkness, Drew pressed against her side, her mind spinning with everything Russ had said. Mates. He thought they were mates. Her wolf stirred, pressing against her consciousness with unusual insistence. And for the first time, Eleanor didn't push her down. She let her wolf rise to the surface, let her feel the connection to Russ that she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. And oh gods, her wolf recognized him too, knew him, wanted him with a ferocity that took Eleanor's breath away. This was real. This was happening. And Eleanor had absolutely no idea what to do about it. She looked down at Drew, who'd fallen back asleep, his little body warm and trusting against her. Your uncle is going to be the death of me, she whispered. Drew's tail wagged once, even in sleep. Despite everything, the nightmares, the revelations, the impossible situation she'd found herself in, Eleanor felt her lips curve into a small smile. Maybe being someone's mate didn't mean being perfect. Maybe it just meant being brave enough to let yourself be seen. And Eleanor had faced down rogues, bled for a stranger's child, and survived a pack that had tried to break her spirit for 12 years. Surely she could be brave enough for this too, couldn't she? Chapter 4. The Ancient Circle Awakens. Eleanor had been at Blackridge for a week when Russ asked her to take a walk. Her ribs had healed enough that she could move without gasping, and the gash in her side had closed to an angry pink scar. Addie had brought her proper clothes, soft leggings, a thick sweater, boots lined with fur. Everything fit perfectly, like they'd been chosen specifically for her. Where are we going? Eleanor asked as they left the main house, Drew padding along beside them in wolf form. The cub refused to be separated from her for more than a few hours at a time. Somewhere you need to see. Russ's breath fogged in the cold air. Snow had fallen overnight, blanketing the territory in pristine white. Somewhere that might help you understand what you are. Eleanor's stomach tightened with anxiety, but she followed. She'd been avoiding this conversation all week, the mate bond, the prophecy, her supposed destiny. Russ had given her space, but she'd felt his eyes on her constantly, tracking her movements, checking on her healing. It should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt safe. They walked in comfortable silence through the forest, the crunch of snow beneath their feet the only sound. Eleanor noticed things about Blackridge territory that Clearwater had never had: markers of care, of cultivation. The paths were maintained. The trees showed signs of selective cutting for sustainable growth. She spotted wards carved into certain trunks, protection symbols she recognized from her mother's healing work. You take care of your land, she observed. The land takes care of us. Only fair to return the favor. Russ glanced at her. Clearwater didn't maintain their territory? Alpha Thomas believed in dominance over nature, not partnership with it. Eleanor's voice went flat. He clear-cut sections for profit, overhunted the game. Let pollution from nearby towns seep into the streams. My mother used to argue with him about it. Said we were killing the land that sustained us. Smart woman. She was. Eleanor's throat tightened. She taught me everything she knew about healing, about herbs, about the old ways. Said even if the pack didn't value those skills, I should. That knowledge was power they couldn't take from me. Russ was quiet for a moment. She sounds like she loved you very much. She did, but she was still afraid. Eleanor kicked at a clump of snow. Love and fear can exist in the same heart. I learned that early. They crested a hill, and Eleanor's breath caught. Below them lay a valley she hadn't seen before, a hidden pocket of land surrounded by ancient pines. In the center stood a stone circle, weathered by time but still intact. Each stone was taller than a man, carved with symbols that seemed to pulse with faint light even in daylight. And in the very center, a single stone altar draped in snow. What is this place? Eleanor whispered. The Moonstone Circle, built by the first wolves over 1,000 years ago. Russ started down the hill, his voice reverent. It's a sacred site, one of only 3 remaining in all the territories. My ancestors have protected it for generations. Eleanor followed, her wolf stirring with unusual intensity. The closer they got to the circle, the more her skin prickled with energy. It felt like standing near lightning about to strike, electric, dangerous, alive. Drew whined softly, pressing against her leg. It's okay, Eleanor murmured, though she wasn't sure it was. They entered the circle, and the moment Eleanor crossed the threshold, everything changed. The air grew thick, heavy with power. The symbols on the stones began to glow, not with reflected light, but with their own inner luminescence. Silver light, the exact shade of her wolf's fur. Russ, Eleanor's voice shook. What's happening? He stood at the altar, watching her with an expression of awe and something else. Vindication, maybe. The circle recognizes you. It hasn't reacted to anyone in over 200 years. Eleanor took another step forward, and the light intensified. Her skin began to glow in response, silver flames dancing across her arms without heat, without pain, just pure, radiant energy. I don't understand. Look at the altar. Eleanor approached slowly, Drew staying close. The stone altar was carved with intricate designs, wolves running beneath a full moon, figures with raised hands calling down light, battles and births and deaths all woven together in an epic story. But it was the center image that made Eleanor's heart stop. A woman stood with arms outstretched, silver flames pouring from her hands. Around her, the world was chaos, darkness, destruction, wolves falling. But where her light touched, the darkness retreated. Where her flames reached, life returned. And above her head, carved in script so old Eleanor could barely read it, "She who bridges the light and the dark shall restore balance when all seems lost." The Silver Moon Prophecy, Russ said softly, coming to stand beside her. Written by the first Alpha King 1,000 years ago. He foresaw a time when the packs would fall to darkness, when rogues would rise and wolves would forget the old ways. And he saw that one of the marked would return to save us. Eleanor's hands trembled. That's not me. That can't be me. You're marked. You have the silver flame. And you appeared exactly when the prophecy said you would, when darkness was rising, when innocents were dying, when we needed you most. No. Eleanor stepped back, shaking her head. This is insane. I didn't appear because of some prophecy. I appeared because I stumbled across a child being murdered and couldn't walk away. That's not destiny, that's just being decent. Is it? Russ's amber eyes held hers. Or did the universe put you exactly where you needed to be at exactly the right moment? You saved Drew. Drew is the last heir of the Blackridge bloodline. If he'd died, my line would have ended. The largest pack in the Northern Territories would have fallen into chaos. Which is exactly what whoever is organizing these rogue attacks wants. The pieces started clicking together in Eleanor's mind, a puzzle she didn't want to solve. You think someone is trying to destabilize the packs? I know they are. 5 coordinated attacks in 3 months. Always targeting leaders, heirs, or sacred sites. Always trying to create chaos and fear. Russ's jaw tightened. Someone wants us divided. Wants us too busy fighting each other to see the real threat. What real threat? I don't know yet, but the prophecy mentions darkness rising. He gestured to the altar. Not rogues. Not rival packs. Darkness. Something older. More dangerous. Something that our ancestors fought and sealed away. Eleanor's skin went cold despite the flames still dancing across her arms. You think something ancient is waking up. I think something ancient has woken up. And it's using rogues as pawns to weaken us before it strikes. The implications were staggering. Eleanor looked at the carving again, at the woman standing against impossible odds, and felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her like a physical thing. I can't be her, she said quietly. I can't be this savior. I don't even know how to control my power, Russ. I spent 12 years suppressing it. What if I try to fight, and I fail? What if I hurt people? What if, Eleanor? He took her hands, seemingly unbothered by the silver flames that wrapped around both of them. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to try. And if I'm not? His smile was sad. Then we'll face what's coming without the advantage, the prophecy promised. And a lot of wolves will probably die. He squeezed her hands. But I won't force you. This has to be your choice. Eleanor looked down at their joined hands, at the way his skin didn't burn in her flames, at the way the silver light seemed to wrap around him protectively rather than push him away. Her wolf surged forward with sudden intensity, and before Eleanor could stop her, a vision slammed into her consciousness. She saw herself standing in this very circle, but the stones were whole and gleaming. Wolves surrounded her, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. And facing them across a field of ash and bone was something massive. Something wrong. Something that shouldn't exist in the waking world. Shadow made manifest. Darkness given form. And Eleanor, the Eleanor in the vision, didn't flinch. She raised her hands, and silver flames erupted like a tidal wave, crashing against the darkness with the force of a hurricane. The vision shattered. Eleanor gasped, stumbling. Russ caught her immediately, his arms wrapping around her waist. What happened? What did you see? I saw, Eleanor's voice shook. I saw war. I saw something terrible coming, and I saw myself fighting it. Did you win? I don't know. The vision ended before. She looked up at him, fear and wonder warring in her chest. Russ, what if this is real? What if I really am supposed to do this? Then you won't do it alone. His hand cupped her cheek. I'll be beside you every step. My pack will support you. And we'll find others, wolves who still remember the old ways, who aren't afraid of power that's different. Why? The question burst out of her. Why would you risk everything for me? For a prophecy that might not even be true? Because I've seen what you're capable of when you're terrified and bleeding and backed into a corner. I've seen your heart, Eleanor. His thumb brushed across her lips. And because my wolf chose you before I even knew your name. Whether that's destiny or instinct, or just dumb luck. I don't care. I choose you. The prophecy is just confirmation of what I already knew. Eleanor's breath hitched. The mate bond thrummed between them, undeniable now in this sacred space. She could feel him, his determination, his fierce protective instinct, his absolute certainty that she was worth fighting for. And underneath it all, something deeper. Something that made her wolf whine with longing. Love. He was falling in love with her. Maybe already had. I'm scared, she admitted. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. He leaned his forehead against hers. But don't let fear make your choices. Let courage make them. Let the part of you that saved Drew, that stood against rogues, that survived 12 years of being told you were wrong, let her decide. Drew yipped, dancing around their feet. The cub's energy was infectious, joyful despite everything he'd lost. Eleanor looked at him, then at the altar, then at Russ's amber eyes burning with faith she didn't deserve but wanted desperately to earn. She thought about her mother, teaching her the old ways even when the pack mocked them. She thought about her father, who'd been afraid but had still told her stories about the original alphas, about wolves who could call down the moon's light. She thought about every time she'd made herself small, swallowed her power, pretended to be less than she was just to survive. And she thought about that moment in the snow, when she'd chosen to protect an innocent child and damn the consequences. That had been easy, instinctive, right. Maybe this could be too. I don't know how to be what the prophecy wants, Eleanor said slowly. But I know how to protect people. I know how to stand against evil, even when I'm terrified. And I know, she took a shaky breath, I know I don't want anyone else to feel the way I felt growing up. Wrong. Unwanted. Afraid of their own strength. Russ's smile was brilliant, transforming his harsh features into something beautiful. Then that's enough. We'll figure out the rest as we go. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy but simple. He pulled her closer. You're not alone anymore, Eleanor. You don't have to carry this by yourself. The silver flames pulsed brighter, responding to her emotions. And this time, Eleanor didn't try to suppress them. She let them burn, let them dance, let them fill the circle with light that had been absent for 2 centuries. The stones sang an actual sound, like crystal bells resonating with her power. Drew howled, his young voice joining the symphony. And Russ held her through it all. Unafraid. Unwavering. When the flames finally subsided, Eleanor felt different. Not more powerful, exactly, but more complete. Like pieces of herself she'd locked away had finally clicked back into place. What happens now? She asked. Now we prepare. I'll call a council meeting, introduce you properly to the pack. We'll start training you to control your power, teaching you the old histories. Russ's expression grew serious. And we'll get ready for whatever's coming. Because if that vision was true, we don't have much time. Eleanor nodded, fear and determination tangling in her chest. Okay. I'll try. That's all I ask. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and reverent. Thank you, Eleanor. For being brave. For choosing to fight. For being exactly who you are. They stood in the ancient circle as snow began to fall again, soft and quiet. Drew curled up on the altar, already falling asleep, and Eleanor let herself lean into Russ's warmth, accepting the comfort she'd denied herself for so long. Somewhere in the forest, a raven cawed harsh, discordant. Eleanor's wolf bristled with sudden unease. Russ tensed, his eyes scanning the trees. What is it? I don't know. But something's... She couldn't finish the sentence. Because emerging from the forest, moving with predatory grace, were wolves, a dozen of them, maybe more. But these weren't rogues. These were Clearwater wolves. And leading them, his gray fur streaked with white, his eyes cold and calculating, was Alpha Thomas. He shifted as he approached the circle, his pack fanning out behind him. Eleanor Stevenson. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Chapter 5. When the past comes calling. Eleanor's blood turned to ice. Alpha Thomas looked exactly as she remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and cold gray eyes that had never held warmth when they looked at her. He wore authority like a second skin, and behind him his wolves stood in perfect formation, obedient, controlled, terrified of disappointing him. She recognized some of them: Brad, who'd been 2 years ahead of her in training; Sandy, who'd once been kind before the pack's fear of Eleanor had made kindness too dangerous; Glenn, no, different Glenn. This one younger, meaner. All of them watching her like she was prey. Russ moved in front of Eleanor immediately, his body a shield. Alpha Thomas. You're a long way from Clearwater territory. And you're on my land without permission or invitation. My apologies, Alpha King. Thomas's tone was anything but apologetic. But this is a pack matter. Eleanor is one of mine, and she left without proper release from her obligations. I'm simply here to collect what's mine and return home. I'm not yours. The words came out of Eleanor before she could stop them. I was never yours. You made that abundantly clear for 12 years. Thomas's eyes narrowed. You were under my protection. I was under your control. There's a difference. Eleanor stepped out from behind Russ, ignoring his low growl of warning. Her hands trembled, but she kept them at her sides. You locked me away, forbade me to shift. Let my parents die while I begged you to let me fight. You don't get to call that protection. I kept you safe. You kept yourself safe from me. Silver flames sparked at Eleanor's fingertips, involuntary, responding to her anger. Because you knew if I ever learned to control my power, I'd be stronger than you, and you couldn't stand that. Thomas's face went red. How dare you speak to me with such disrespect? She speaks truth. And truth doesn't require your permission. Russ's voice was cold steel. Eleanor is under my protection now. She's made her choice to leave Clearwater. And unless you have a formal grievance to present to the Northern Council, this conversation is over. I have every right to reclaim a pack member who fled without. Fled? Eleanor's laugh was bitter. I was bleeding out in the snow, saving your nephew from rogues you failed to stop. That's not fleeing. That's surviving. One of the Clearwater wolves, Sandy, shifted uncomfortably. Good. Let them remember she'd nearly died protecting an innocent while they sat safe behind Thomas's walls. Thomas's jaw tightened. The fact remains that you are bound by Clearwater law. Your law ended the moment she crossed into my territory. Russ took a step forward, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. And even if it hadn't, she's marked. One of the Silver Moon bloodline. That makes her subject to ancient law, not pack law. which means she answers to the Council of Alphas, not to you. Eleanor saw calculation flash across Thomas's face. He'd known. Of course he'd known what she was. That's why he'd spent 12 years keeping her suppressed, controlled, afraid to use her power. The marked are extinct, Thomas said, but his voice lacked conviction. Clearly not. Russ gestured to Eleanor, to the stones still glowing faintly with silver light. The Moonstone Circle recognizes her. The prophecy recognizes her. And I recognize her. Your opinion on the matter is irrelevant. You would risk interpack conflict over one wolf? Thomas's eyes went hard. She's damaged goods, Mercer. Unstable. Dangerous. I spent years trying to teach her control, and she never learned. What makes you think you can succeed where I failed? Because I'm not trying to break her spirit. Russ's words were quiet, but they carried like thunder. I'm trying to help her remember she was never broken to begin with. Eleanor's throat tightened with emotion. No one had ever defended her like this. No one had ever stood between her and authority and said, no, you don't get to hurt her anymore. Thomas's expression darkened. I came here, offering peace, offering to take her back despite her disobedience. But if you insist on keeping her, I do, then you're declaring her a member of Blackridge Pack, which means any crimes she commits, any damage she causes, any instability she brings that falls on you. Thomas smiled, cold and calculating. Are you prepared for that responsibility, Alpha King? Absolutely. Russ didn't hesitate. Eleanor has my full protection and the full support of Blackridge Pack. If anyone has an issue with that, they can bring it to the Northern Council. But until then, she stays. And you leave. Now. The Clearwater Wolves shifted nervously. They'd come expecting to collect a wayward pack member, not to face down an Alpha King on his own territory. But Thomas wasn't done. Perhaps Eleanor should have a say in this. He looked past Russ, his gray eyes finding hers. After all, she's lived in Clearwater her entire life. She knows our ways, our traditions. She has history there, memories of her parents. Is she truly willing to throw all that away for a stranger who's known her for barely a week? The words hit their mark. Eleanor felt doubt creep in, cold and insidious. He was right, wasn't he? She'd known Russ for 7 days, 7 days against 25 years. What if this was just infatuation? What if the mate bond was making her irrational? What if she was making a terrible mistake? Eleanor. Russ's voice was soft, meant only for her. You don't have to decide anything right now. But know this, whatever you choose, I won't force you. If you want to go back to Clearwater, I'll let you go. But if you want to stay here, if you want to learn about your power and your heritage, if you want to be seen for who you really are, then stay. And I'll stand between you and anyone who tries to make you feel wrong again. Eleanor looked at Thomas. At the man who'd controlled her for 12 years, who'd let her parents die, who'd made her believe she was cursed. Then she looked at Russ. At the man who'd carried her broken body through a storm, who'd held her through nightmares, who looked at her silver flames like they were beautiful instead of terrifying. The choice should have been impossible. It was the easiest decision she'd ever made. I'm staying. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. I'm staying with Blackridge Pack. I'm staying with Russ. And I'm done letting you make me feel ashamed of what I am. Thomas's face went cold. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Eleanor stepped fully out from behind Russ, facing her former alpha directly. You don't own me. You never did. And I'm done pretending you have any power over my life. You ungrateful. Careful. Russ's voice dropped to a growl. You're still on my territory. And insults directed at my pack members are insults directed at me. The tension ratcheted up another notch. Eleanor could see Thomas's wolves preparing to shift, could feel violence hovering in the air like a living thing. Drew whimpered from the altar, sensing danger. And that small sound, that frightened child's cry, made Eleanor's decision crystallize into absolute certainty. You want to know why I left? Eleanor's hands burst into silver flame, bright enough to make several Clearwater wolves stumble back. Because I'd rather die free than live as your prisoner. Because I'd rather risk everything with people who see my worth than spend another day with people who see only my flaws. Because when rogues were killing children, I fought to protect them. And what did you do? Nothing. You've done nothing except try to keep wolves like me small and scared and controllable. The flames spread up her arms. Not burning, just radiating pure power. The Moonstone Circle responded, the carved stones blazing with light. This is what I am. Eleanor's voice echoed with that strange layered quality she'd heard the night she saved Drew. I am marked. I am Silvermoon bloodline, and I am done apologizing for being powerful. So you can either accept that and leave peacefully, or you can challenge me here and now, and see exactly what 12 years of suppression looks like when it finally breaks free. The silence was absolute. Thomas stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Behind him, his wolves had gone completely still, torn between instinct to submit to obvious power and loyalty to their alpha. You've changed, Thomas said finally. No. Eleanor's smile was sharp. I've just stopped pretending to be what you wanted me to be. For a long moment, Eleanor thought Thomas might actually challenge her. She could see the calculation in his eyes, the wounded pride, the fury at losing control. But he was also a survivor. And survivors knew when they were outmatched. This isn't over. Thomas shifted back to wolf form, his pack following suit. The council will hear about this. About an alpha king harboring a dangerous wolf, making claims about extinct bloodlines, disrupting pack hierarchy. Let them hear. Russ's smile was all teeth. I look forward to explaining to the council how you suppressed and abused one of the marked for over a decade. I'm sure they'll find that fascinating. Thomas's wolf snarled. But he was already backing away. He'd lost this confrontation. And they both knew it. The Clearwater wolves melted back into the forest, their retreat swift and silent. Only Sandy paused at the tree line, shifting back for just a moment. Eleanor, she called. I'm sorry. For not being braver. For not speaking up. I'm glad you got out. Then she was gone, leaving Eleanor staring after her with tears burning in her eyes. The moment the Clearwater wolves were out of sight, Eleanor's legs gave out. Russ caught her before she hit the ground, gathering her against his chest. I've got you. You're okay, you did so well. I can't believe I just… Eleanor's voice shook. I threatened an alpha. I could have started a war. What if… You stood your ground, you claimed your power, you chose yourself. Russ pulled back enough to look at her face. And you were magnificent. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Eleanor. It's acting despite it. His thumb brushed away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. And you just told your abuser that he has no power over you anymore. That's not nothing. That's everything. Drew scrambled down from the altar and pressed against Eleanor's side, whining softly. She wrapped an arm around him, drawing comfort from his small, solid presence. What happens now? She asked. Thomas will go to the council. He'll try to turn them against me. Against you. Let him try. Russ's voice was grim. The council knows me. They know I don't make claims lightly. And once they learn what Thomas did, how he suppressed one of the marked, how he let potential prophecy fulfillment slip through his fingers because of his own insecurities, they won't side with him. You can't be sure of that. No. But I can be sure that I'll fight for you. That Blackridge will fight for you. He helped her stand, keeping one arm around her waist. Come on. Let's get you back to the house. You need rest after all that power expenditure. They started back through the forest, Drew trailing behind them. Eleanor felt drained, hollowed out, like confronting Thomas had taken everything she had. But underneath the exhaustion, there was something else. Pride. She'd stood up to him. She'd claimed her power. She'd chosen herself. And she was still alive. Still standing. Still here. Russ? Eleanor said softly. Yeah? Thank you. For letting me handle that. For not taking over or trying to fight my battles for me. He smiled, pressing a kiss to her temple. You're perfectly capable of fighting your own battles, Eleanor. I'm just here to make sure you don't have to fight them alone. Something warm bloomed in Eleanor's chest, not the mate bond exactly, though that hummed between them constantly now. This was softer, deeper. This was trust. And maybe, just maybe, the beginnings of love. They were halfway home when Javier burst through the trees, his expression urgent. Your Majesty, we have a problem. Russ tensed. What kind of problem? 3 packs just sent formal petitions to the council. They're demanding an emergency session. Javier's eyes flicked to Eleanor, apologetic. They want to discuss the threat posed by an uncontrolled marked wolf operating in Northern Territories. Eleanor's stomach dropped. That was fast. Thomas must have sent word before he even confronted us. Russ's jaw tightened. He wanted backup in place. Clever bastard. When's the session? Eleanor asked. 3 days. At the gathering grounds. Javier looked at Russ. The council is demanding you appear in person. And they're demanding you bring Eleanor. Eleanor felt the weight of what was coming settle over her like a shroud. She'd challenged an alpha and won. But now she'd have to defend herself to an entire council of alphas, powerful wolves, who'd spent centuries believing the marked were extinct, dangerous, better off dead. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about whether the old bloodlines had a place in the modern world. This was about whether power that couldn't be controlled by traditional hierarchy should be allowed to exist. This was about whether Eleanor Stevenson deserved to live free, or whether she should be bound, suppressed, broken, just like Thomas had tried to break her for 12 years. Well, Eleanor said quietly, her hand finding Russ's. I guess we have 3 days to prepare. Russ's grip tightened on hers. 3 days to prepare. And then we show them exactly what the market are capable of. Eleanor looked up at him, at the fierce determination in his amber eyes, and felt her own resolve crystallize. She'd spent 12 years being afraid. She'd spent 12 years making herself small. But if the council wanted to see what happened when you tried to cage something powerful, Eleanor would show them. And this time, she wouldn't hold back. Chapter 6. Learning to Trust Again. The first night after the confrontation, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She stood at her bedroom window, watching snow fall over Blackridge territory, her mind replaying the day's events on an endless loop. Thomas's face. The Clearwater wolves backing away. Her own voice, strong and certain, claiming her power. She'd been brave. But bravery in the moment was easy compared to facing what came next. 3 days until the council. 3 days to prepare for alphas who'd judge her, test her, possibly condemn her. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Come in, Eleanor called, already knowing who it was. She could feel him through the mate bond, now a constant warm presence at the edge of her consciousness. Russ entered carrying 2 mugs. He'd changed into sleep pants and a loose shirt, his hair damp from a shower. Without the formal armor of alpha authority, he looked younger, more approachable, more dangerous to her heart. Couldn't sleep either? He offered her one of the mugs. It's chamomile. Addie swears it helps. Eleanor accepted it gratefully, breathing in the steam. Too much in my head. Want to talk about it? Russ leaned against the window frame beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. I keep thinking about Sandy, how she apologized. Eleanor's voice went soft. She was kind to me once. When we were children. Then the pack's fear made her cruel. Or maybe not cruel, just absent. She stopped seeing me. Like I'd become invisible. Fear does that. Makes people choose safety over kindness. Russ took a sip of his tea. I'm sorry you experienced that. Are you afraid of me? The question came out before Eleanor could stop it. Of my power? Of what I might become? Russ turned to face her fully, his amber eyes intense. Honestly? Always. I'm terrified. His admission shocked her. But not of your power, Eleanor. I'm terrified of failing you. Of not being strong enough to protect you from what's coming. Of watching you get hurt because I wasn't fast enough, smart enough, ruthless enough. His hand came up to cup her cheek. I'm terrified of losing you before I've even really had you. Eleanor's breath caught. Russ, I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other in the conventional sense. But the mate bond doesn't lie, Eleanor. My wolf knows you. And every day I spend with you, I discover something new that makes me fall harder. His thumb brushed across her lips. Like how you check on Drew every morning before you check on yourself. Or how you apologize to plants when you have to harvest them for medicine. Or how you hum when you think no one's listening. I don't hum, Eleanor protested weakly. You do, this soft, unconscious melody. I heard it yesterday when you were organizing the herb stores. His smile was tender. It's beautiful. You're beautiful. And I'm terrified that one day you'll realize you could do better than a wolf who killed his way to a crown. Eleanor set down her mug and took his face in both hands. You didn't kill your way anywhere. You earned your position through strength, yes, but also through caring for your pack, through making hard choices, through being the kind of alpha who'd risk political conflict to protect someone who needed help. You make it sound noble. It is noble. She held his gaze. And I'm terrified too, Russ. I'm terrified of the mate bond, of destiny, of prophecies I don't understand. I'm terrified that I'll hurt you, or disappoint you, or fail when it matters most. But I'm more terrified of walking away, and never knowing what we could have been. Something blazed in his eyes, hope, hunger, barely leashed desire. Eleanor, I want to try, she whispered. I want to see where this goes. Not because of prophecy or duty or anything except, She took a shaky breath. Except that when I'm with you, I don't feel wrong. I feel like maybe, possibly, I could be exactly right. Russ leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. Can I kiss you? Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs. Yes. His lips met hers soft and careful, like she was something precious that might shatter. Eleanor's eyes fluttered closed, and she leaned into him, one hand sliding into his hair. The kiss was gentle but thorough, tasting of chamomile and promise. Russ's hand settled on her waist, anchoring her, and the mate bond flared between them, not overwhelming, just right, like two puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Eleanor felt dizzy with want and wonder. I've wanted to do that since the moment you threatened Alpha Thomas with silver flames, Russ murmured against her lips. Eleanor laughed, breathless. That's what did it for you? Threats of violence? Watching you claim your power? Watching you stand tall and fierce, and absolutely magnificent? His forehead pressed against hers. Yeah, that did it for me. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, the world outside forgotten. Then Drew's small howl echoed from down the hall, probably another nightmare. Eleanor pulled back reluctantly. I should go to him, I know. Russ pressed one more kiss to her forehead. He needs you. Will you come with me? His smile was answer enough. They found Drew in his room, the nursery Russ had set up, with soft blankets and toys and a small bed shaped like a wolf den. The cub was pacing, whimpering, his little body trembling. Eleanor knelt immediately. Hey, little one, bad dreams? Drew yipped and launched himself at her, burrowing into her arms. She scooped him up, settling onto the floor with her back against the wall. Russ sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Your mama loved you so much, Eleanor murmured to Drew, stroking his fur. She fought so hard to keep you safe, and she'd be so proud of how brave you've been. Drew's whimpering quieted. His blue eyes, so heartbreakingly aware, looked up at her with absolute trust. You're going to grow up strong and kind, Eleanor continued, like your uncle. And when you're old enough, I'll teach you about your mama, about how fierce she was, how loving, how she gave everything to protect you. Russ's hand found Eleanor's, threading their fingers together. She glanced at him and saw tears tracking down his cheeks, silent, but genuine. Thank you, he said quietly, for loving him, for giving him what I couldn't. What do you mean? Softness, gentleness. I can protect him, train him, make him strong. But you, his voice roughened, you give him comfort, you make him feel safe enough to grieve. That's not something I know how to do. Eleanor squeezed his hand. Then we'll do it together. You give him strength, I'll give him softness, and between us, maybe he'll grow up whole. We make a good team. Yeah. Eleanor smiled. We do. Drew had fallen asleep against her chest, his small body finally relaxed. Eleanor didn't want to move, didn't want to disturb this perfect moment, the three of them curled together like a real family. Tell me about your sister, she said softly. About Olivia. Russ was quiet for so long, Eleanor thought he might not answer. Then, she was 5 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, she had this light about her, like joy was her default state. His smile was sad. Our father ignored her because she wasn't male, wasn't a potential heir, and our mother died when Olivia was 3. So I raised her, mostly, made sure she ate, trained her to fight, protected her from our father's moods. She was lucky to have you. I was lucky to have her. She reminded me that being powerful didn't mean being cruel, that strength could be gentle. He stared at Drew. When she told me she was pregnant, I was terrified, but she was so happy, Eleanor, so ready to be a mother. And when Drew was born, his voice broke. I'd never seen her more complete. Eleanor leaned her head on his shoulder, offering silent comfort. The rogues knew exactly when to strike, Russ continued. I was at a council meeting 3 territories away. Most of my warriors were with me. Olivia was alone with Drew and only 2 guards. She held them off for 20 minutes, giving Drew time to hide. By the time my wolves arrived, he couldn't finish. Didn't need to. I'm so sorry, Eleanor whispered. I should have been there. Should have protected her. You can't be everywhere, Russ. And she knew that. She knew the risks and she fought anyway because that's what mothers do. That's what love does. Eleanor turned to look at him. And now you're honoring her by raising her son, by loving him, by making sure he grows up knowing how much she sacrificed. That's not failure, that's love. Russ kissed her, then deeper this time, more desperate, like he needed her to chase away the ghosts. Eleanor kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. Comfort, understanding, acceptance, want. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Drew made a small sound of protest at being jostled. "Sorry, little man," Russ murmured, stroking the cub's ears. They sat in comfortable silence, the three of them, until Eleanor's eyes grew heavy. "Stay," Russ said quietly. "Sleep here tonight. We'll keep the nightmares away together." Eleanor should have said no. Should have maintained some distance, some propriety. Instead she said, "Okay." Russ gathered Drew carefully and placed him in his small bed, tucking blankets around him. Then he stretched out on the floor beside Eleanor, pulling her against his chest. "This okay?" he asked. "Perfect." And it was. His arms around her, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, the sound of Drew's soft breathing, all of it combined to create the safest she'd ever felt. "Eleanor?" Russ's voice was drowsy. When this is over, the council, the rogues, whatever's coming, I'm going to court you properly. Take you on dates, show you all the beautiful places in my territory, make you believe you deserve everything good this world has to offer." Eleanor's throat tightened with emotion. "I'd like that." "Good." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Sleep now. I've got you." And surrounded by warmth and safety and the tentative beginnings of love, Eleanor finally slept. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Russ called in his most trusted advisors, Javier, his beta, Wallace, his second, and Addie, who apparently had a gift for political maneuvering. They strategized, debated, planned for every possible scenario the council might throw at them. But Russ also made time for Eleanor. Every morning, they trained. Not combat, not yet. First, she needed to learn control. "Your power responds to emotion," Russ explained as they stood in a clearing far from the main house. "Fear makes it explosive. Anger makes it destructive. But what does calm make it?" Eleanor closed her eyes, centering herself the way he'd taught her. She reached for her power, that silver flame that lived beneath her skin. And instead of shoving it down, she invited it up. Gently, carefully. Silver light bloomed across her palms, steady and controlled. "Good," Russ said. "Now hold it. Don't let it flare. Don't let it die. Just be with it." Eleanor held the flames, feeling their warmth, their potential. For the first time, they didn't feel foreign or frightening. They felt like coming home. "How does it feel?" Russ asked. "Like breathing." Eleanor opened her eyes, marveling at the light dancing across her hands. "Like this is what I was always meant to do." Russ's smile was proud. "Because it is. This isn't wrong, Eleanor. This is you. Whole, complete, powerful." They trained for hours, with Russ pushing her to explore her abilities. She learned she could shape the flames, control their intensity, even make them solid enough to form barriers or weapons. "The old texts say the marked could do incredible things," Russ said, watching her create a sword of silver fire. "Heal mortal wounds, speak to the moon itself, bridge the gap between life and death. You're just scratching the surface." Eleanor let the sword dissolve. "That's terrifying. That's extraordinary." He pulled her close. "And you're going to show the council exactly what extraordinary looks like." In the afternoons, Addie taught Eleanor about pack politics, about the council's dynamics, about which alphas to watch out for, and which might be sympathetic. "Alpha Craig Stevens from Riverside Pack lost his daughter to rogues last year," Addie explained. "He might be receptive to someone who can help stop the attacks. But Alpha Wilson Knapp from Ironwood is traditional, conservative. He'll see you as a threat to established order." "Great," Eleanor muttered. "Half will hate me on principle." "Not hate. Fear." Addie's expression was serious. "And fear can be overcome if you show them you're not the enemy, that you want the same things they want: safety, stability, peace." "Do I, though?" Eleanor asked. "Want those things? Don't you?" Eleanor thought about Drew's nightmares, about Sandy's apology, about every wolf who'd suffered because someone like Thomas chose control over compassion. "I want better than what we have," she said quietly. "I want a world where power isn't feared unless it's misused, where wolves like me don't have to hide or suppress themselves to survive, where children grow up safe and loved instead of terrorized by rogues and politics." Addie smiled. "Then tell them that," Show them you're not trying to overturn their world, you're trying to save it. In the evenings, Eleanor spent time with Drew. The cub was thriving, his grief still present but softening into something he could carry. He followed her everywhere, his small presence a constant reminder of why she was fighting. And at night she fell asleep in Russ's arms, their bond growing stronger with every shared breath, every whispered conversation, every stolen kiss. On the third night, their last before the council, Russ found her on the balcony outside her room. The moon was full, painting the snow silver. "Nervous?" he asked, joining her at the railing. "Terrified," Eleanor admitted. "What if I fail? What if I can't control my power in front of them? What if they decide I'm too dangerous and then I'll stand with you?" Russ turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you don't face it alone. I'll be beside you every step. And if they try to harm you, they'll have to go through me first." "That's what I'm afraid of," Eleanor whispered. "I don't want you to sacrifice everything for me." "You're not a sacrifice, Eleanor. You're a choice. The easiest choice I've ever made." His thumb brushed across her lips. "I told you before my wolf chose you. But it's not just my wolf anymore. It's me, all of me. I'm falling in love with you, Eleanor Stevenson. Maybe I already have." Tears burned in Eleanor's eyes. "I don't know how to do this, how to be loved, how to accept that I might deserve it." "Then let me teach you." Russ kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the corner of her mouth. "Let me show you every day that you're worthy, that you're wanted, that you're exactly enough." Eleanor pulled him down into a kiss, deep, desperate, full of everything she couldn't say. The mate bond flared between them, so strong now it almost hurt. She could feel his love wrapping around her like a shield, his determination, his absolute certainty that they could face anything together. When they finally broke apart, both were trembling. "After the council," Russ said roughly. "After we've dealt with whatever comes, I want to complete the mate bond. Properly. Officially. I want you as my mate. My queen. My partner in all things." Eleanor's heart soared. "Yes. Yes? Yes to all of it. Yes to being your mate. Yes to facing the council. Yes to believing I might actually deserve this." She smiled through her tears. "Yes to you, Russ. Always yes to you." He swept her into his arms, spinning her around, his laugh pure joy. When he set her down, his eyes were blazing with happiness and heat. "Tomorrow we face the council," he said. "Tomorrow we prove to them that the marked aren't a threat, they're a gift. And then," his smile turned wicked, "then I'm going to court you properly, with all the romance and ceremony and dedication you deserve. I'm holding you to that." "Good." He kissed her once more, soft and sweet. "Now sleep. Tomorrow we change everything." Eleanor crawled into bed, her heart full to bursting. Tomorrow was terrifying. Tomorrow could end in disaster. But tomorrow, she wouldn't face it alone. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Chapter 7. The Council's Judgment. The gathering grounds were exactly as intimidating as Eleanor had imagined. A massive stone amphitheater carved into the side of a mountain, open to the sky, with seats rising in concentric circles around a central platform. Ancient and imposing, it had witnessed centuries of pact disputes, territorial negotiations, and judgments. Today, it would witness Eleanor's trial. Because that's what this was, despite the formal language about assessment and evaluation. The council was here to judge whether she had the right to exist. Eleanor stood beside Russ at the entrance, Drew pressed against her legs in wolf form. The cub had refused to be left behind, and honestly, Eleanor was grateful for his presence. His trust steadied her. "Ready?" Russ asked quietly, his hand finding hers. "No, but I'll do it anyway." His smile was fierce and proud. "That's my girl." They entered together, and the effect was immediate. Every alpha in attendance turned to watch 15 of them, representing every major pack in the Northern Territories. Their collective power pressed against Eleanor's senses like a physical weight. Alpha Thomas sat in the front row, his expression smug. Beside him were two other alphas Eleanor didn't recognize, one massive and scarred, the other lean and cold-eyed. "That's Wilson Knapp," Russ murmured. "The one who looks like he swallowed something sour. And the big one is Edmund Snyder from Stoneclaw Pack. Both traditionalists. Both will side with Thomas." "Great." Eleanor squared her shoulders. "Anyone on our side?" "Craig Stevens." Russ nodded toward a middle-aged alpha with kind eyes and grief-lined face. "And possibly Julian Dixon from Clearbrook. He's practical above all else. If we can prove you're useful, he'll support us. They reached the central platform. Russ took his seat among the council members, leaving Eleanor standing alone in the center, exposed, vulnerable, on display. The head alpha, an ancient wolf named Spencer Hayes, rose to speak. His voice carried, despite his age, authoritative and absolute. We gather today to address a matter of grave importance. Alpha King Russ Mercer has made claims about Eleanor Stevenson, claims that she is one of the marked, descended from the Silvermoon bloodline thought extinct for 2 centuries. He has taken her into his pack and placed her under his protection. Spencer's eyes found Eleanor. Miss Stevenson, do you confirm these claims? Eleanor's throat went dry, but she forced her voice steady. I confirm that my power is unusual, that I can manifest silver flames, and that sacred sites respond to my presence. Whether that makes me marked, she paused. I'm still learning what that means. A convenient answer. Wilson Knapp stood, his voice dripping disdain. You claim ancient bloodline but admit ignorance of your own heritage. How convenient that you cannot prove your legitimacy, yet demand recognition and protection. I'm not demanding anything, Eleanor said. I didn't choose this. I didn't ask to be powerful or different or connected to some prophecy. I'm just trying to survive. And in the process, you've disrupted pack hierarchy, challenged your rightful alpha, and manipulated an alpha king into believing in fairy tales. Thomas rose, his expression cold. Eleanor Stevenson was a member of Clearwater Pack for 25 years. I know her. I know her instability, her lack of control, her dangerous tendencies. The council deserves to hear the truth about what she is. Russ's hands clenched on his chair arms, but he remained seated. They'd agreed Eleanor had to fight this battle herself, or the council would dismiss her as Russ's puppet. Please, Alpha Thomas, Spencer said. Share your testimony. Thomas stepped onto the platform beside Eleanor. He moved like a predator, circling her slowly. Eleanor manifested her wolf at 13, 2 years early, which should have been our first warning. Her wolf was silver, a color that hasn't been seen since the marked were exterminated for good reason. He paused, letting that word exterminated hang in the air. The marked weren't wiped out because they were special. They were wiped out because they were unstable. Their power corrupted them, made them violent, unpredictable. They nearly destroyed all wolf packs before our ancestors had the courage to do what was necessary. Eleanor's blood ran cold. That's not the prophecy says they were healers, protectors. The prophecy is propaganda written by the marked themselves. Edmund Snyder stood now, his voice like grinding stone. I've studied the true histories. The accounts our ancestors kept hidden. The marked believed themselves gods. They enslaved lesser wolves, ruled through fear, and when they were challenged, they burned entire territories to ash. That's a lie, Eleanor protested. The Moonstone Circle recognizes me. Ancient sacred sites don't respond to evil. Or perhaps, Wilson said smoothly, the sites respond to power regardless of its wielder's intent. A blade doesn't care who holds it. Neither does ancient magic. Eleanor looked at Russ desperately. He was staring at Thomas with murder in his eyes, but he couldn't intervene, not without undermining everything they'd planned. Thomas continued, his voice taking on a tone of false concern. I tried to help Eleanor. For 12 years I worked to teach her control, to keep her power contained so she wouldn't hurt anyone. And how did she repay that care? She fled in the night, stole from our territory, and when confronted, she threatened me with violence. I saved a child, Eleanor said, her voice shaking. Drew was dying. I protected him. After you led the rogues straight to him. Thomas's words were poison. The rogues were tracking you, Eleanor. Your silver wolf is a beacon to anyone with the sight to see it. You're the reason my nephew was targeted. You're the reason Olivia Mercer is dead. The amphitheater went silent. Eleanor felt the accusation like a physical blow. No. That's not. I didn't even know Drew existed until. The rogue attacks began 3 months ago. Coordinated, strategic, targeting specific wolves. Thomas pulled out a scroll, unrolling it to reveal a map. And look, every attack happened within 100 miles of wherever Eleanor was at the time. She's not a victim in this. She's the source. Eleanor's mind reeled. It couldn't be true. Could it? But the dates lined up. The locations matched. And suddenly every alpha was looking at her with suspicion, with fear, with the same expression she'd seen on her pack's faces for 12 years. Monster. Threat. Wrong. I didn't. Eleanor's hands burst into flame involuntarily. Several alphas flinched back. I didn't do this. I'm not working with rogues. I would never. Control yourself, Spencer commanded. Or we'll be forced to restrain you. Eleanor tried to pull the flames back, but her emotions were too raw. The power surged, responding to her panic, her fury, her heartbreak. I'm trying. This is exactly what I warned about, Thomas said, stepping away from her like she was diseased. She can't control it. She's dangerous, and as long as she lives, she'll continue to draw darkness to our territories. That's enough. Russ stood, his voice cutting through the chaos. You're manipulating evidence to suit your narrative, Thomas. Eleanor saved Drew. I was there. I saw it. You saw what you wanted to see, Wilson said. You've been obsessed with finding the marked for years, Mercer. We all know it. And when this girl showed up with silver flames, you convinced yourself she was the answer to some prophecy. But look at her, she's one moment away from losing control completely. She's exactly what the old accounts warned about. Eleanor's vision blurred with tears. The flames were getting hotter now, climbing up her arms. She could feel her wolf clawing to the surface, desperate, trapped, just like she'd been for 12 years. Eleanor, breathe, Russ said, moving toward the platform. Look at me. Just breathe. But Spencer held up a hand, stopping him. Alpha King, you will not interfere. Miss Stevenson must prove she can control herself, or we have no choice but to declare her a threat. She's frightened, Russ snarled. You're backing her into a corner, and then condemning her for defending herself. We're assessing the danger she poses, Spencer said calmly. And right now, that danger appears substantial. Eleanor could feel it happening, the loss of control Thomas had always predicted. The power was too much, too strong, responding to years of suppression and fear and rage. Silver flames exploded across the platform, forcing the alphas back. I'm sorry, Eleanor gasped. I'm sorry, I'm trying. Drew howled, a small, frightened sound that cut through everything else. Eleanor's eyes found the cub, saw him trembling, saw the fear on his small face, and something inside her crystallized. No, she would not lose control. She would not prove Thomas right. She would not become the monster they expected. Eleanor closed her eyes and reached deep, past the fear, past the anger, past the years of shame and self-loathing. She reached for the core of who she was, not the power, but the purpose. Protect the innocent. Stand against evil. Choose courage. The flames obeyed. Eleanor opened her eyes, and the silver fire pulled back into her skin, controlled, contained, tamed. She stood in the center of the platform, breathing hard, but steady. The alphas stared. I'm not losing control, Eleanor said quietly. I'm choosing control. There's a difference. For a moment she thought she'd won. Thought she'd proven herself. Then Craig Stevens stood, the alpha who'd lost his daughter, the one they'd hoped might be sympathetic. I appreciate your courage, Miss Stevenson, and I don't believe you're intentionally causing harm. His voice was heavy with regret. But Thomas is right about one thing, the attacks started when you emerged. And my daughter died in one of those attacks. So I have to ask, even if you're not working with the rogues, what if you're still the reason they're here? Eleanor felt the ground drop out from under her. I would never. I know. But intention doesn't matter if the result is the same. Craig's eyes were sympathetic but firm. I'm sorry, but I cannot support allowing you to remain free in the territories. The risk is too great. One by one, other alphas stood. Julian Dixon, Glenn Dalton, young Charles from Northwind. All wolves they'd hoped might be neutral, might be swayed. All voting against her. Russ was on his feet immediately. This is insane. You're condemning her based on coincidence and fear. We're protecting our packs, Wilson said coldly. Which is more than you're doing, Mercer. You've let your obsession with the prophecy blind you to the obvious truth: she's dangerous. And keeping her alive puts every wolf in the Northern Territories at risk. Then what are you proposing? Russ's voice was deadly quiet. Spencer Hayes stood, his expression grave. The council votes to declare Eleanor Stevenson a Class 1 threat. She is to be bound with silver, her power suppressed through whatever means necessary, and held in secure custody until we can determine the extent of her connection to the rogue attacks. You mean imprisoned? Eleanor's voice sounded distant, disconnected. You mean buried somewhere dark and forgotten, just like Thomas did for 12 years. We mean contained, Spencer said. For everyone's safety. No. Russ's power exploded outward, making every alpha in the amphitheater stumble. Absolutely not. She's under my protection. You want her. You go through me. Russ. Don't. Eleanor started. But he was beyond listening. His wolf was too close to the surface, his eyes blazing amber gold with fury. She saved my nephew's life. She stood against rogues while bleeding out. She's shown more courage and honor in 2 weeks than most wolves show in a lifetime. And you want to lock her away because you're too afraid to see her for what she really is, not a threat, but a weapon against the darkness that's actually coming for us. You're blinded by the mate bond, Thomas said, with false sympathy. We understand, Mercer. But you're compromised. You can't see her clearly. I see her perfectly. Russ moved to stand beside Eleanor on the platform. And I'm telling you right now, you try to take her, you'll have to kill me first. The amphitheater erupted in chaos, alphas shouting, arguing, some agreeing with Russ, others calling for his removal from the council. And Eleanor stood in the center of it all, watching her worst fears come true. She was the reason for the chaos. She was the source of the conflict. Thomas had been right all along. She was too dangerous, too different, too wrong to exist in their world. Russ. She touched his arm, her voice barely audible over the shouting. Stop. He looked down at her, his expression fierce. I won't let them. You have to. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. Because if you keep fighting this, you'll lose everything. Your position, your pack, your ability to actually protect wolves who need you. And I can't. I won't be the reason you destroy yourself. Eleanor, I'll go with them. The words felt like swallowing glass. I'll let them bind me, contain me, whatever they want. Just promise me you'll keep Drew safe. Promise me you'll find whoever's really behind the attacks. Promise me, her voice broke. Promise me you'll forget about me and move on. Never. Russ cupped her face in both hands. I will never forget you. I will never stop fighting for you. And I will burn down every pack that tries to keep you from me. That's exactly what I'm afraid of. Eleanor pulled away, her heart shattering. I love you, Russ. Which is why I'm letting you go. She turned to Spencer Hayes, her voice steady despite the tears. I'll submit to the council's judgment. I won't fight. I won't resist. Just, please don't hurt him. Don't punish Black Ridge Pack for trying to protect me. Spencer nodded slowly. Alpha Mercer will face no sanctions. He acted according to his conscience, even if misguided. You have my word. Guards moved forward, wolves carrying silver chains that would burn and suppress her power. Eleanor didn't resist as they bound her wrists, even though the metal seared her skin. Drew howled in distress, trying to reach her, but Javier held him back gently. I'm sorry, little one, Eleanor whispered. Be brave. Your uncle will take care of you. Russ was still fighting, still arguing, his wolf dangerously close to taking over. It took 3 alphas to hold him back as they led Eleanor away. The last thing she saw before they dragged her into darkness was Russ's face twisted with rage and grief and helpless fury. And Eleanor understood, finally, what Thomas had been trying to teach her all along. Love wasn't enough. Power wasn't enough. Sometimes, no matter how hard you fought, you still lost. The cell they threw her in was deep underground, carved from solid rock, lit by a single flickering torch. The silver chains burned constantly, keeping her power suppressed, keeping her wolf locked deep inside. Eleanor curled into a ball on the cold stone floor and let herself break completely. She'd tried so hard, been so brave, believed for one perfect moment that she might actually deserve happiness. And it had all been a lie. She was exactly what Thomas had always said, dangerous, unstable, cursed. A monster that needed to be caged. Time became meaningless in the dark. Hours or days Eleanor couldn't tell. Guards brought food she didn't eat, water she barely touched. Her wrists bled where the silver burned, but she welcomed the pain. It was real. It was proof she still existed. And then, just when Eleanor thought she might actually die down here, she heard footsteps. Not guards. These were lighter, more cautious. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, middle-aged, with kind eyes and a healer's gentle hands. Eleanor Stevenson? The woman whispered. My name is Addie Hanna. Well, I suppose you know me. But what you don't know is that I'm also part of the resistance. Eleanor blinked, confused. The what? The wolves who still remember the old ways. Who believe the marked were protectors, not monsters. Addie knelt beside her, pulling out a key. And we're getting you out of here. Because the real darkness is coming, child. And whether you believe it or not. She unlocked the silver chains. You're the only thing standing between our world and complete annihilation. Chapter 8. When Darkness Falls. Eleanor stared at Addie in disbelief. You're, what? Part of the resistance. Wolves who never believed the lies about the marked. Addie worked quickly, unlocking the silver chains with practiced efficiency. We've been waiting for you, Eleanor. Watching, hoping. And when Russ found you, we knew it was time. The chains fell away, and Eleanor gasped as feeling rushed back into her hands. The burns were deep, angry, but already beginning to heal now that the silver was gone. Russ knows about this? No, we couldn't risk telling him. The council watches him too closely. Addie pulled Eleanor to her feet. But we don't have much time. The darkness Thomas mentioned? It's not coming. It's already here. As if summoning it, a tremor shook the underground prison. Dust rained from the ceiling, and somewhere above, screams echoed. Eleanor's wolf surged forward, alert, ready. What's happening? The real reason for the rogue attacks. The real enemy. Addie's face was grim. They weren't trying to destabilize the Pax, Eleanor. They were hurting you, getting you exactly where they wanted you, separated from Russ. Powerless, imprisoned. Because the one thing that could stop them is you. Another tremor. Louder this time. Closer. Stop what? Eleanor demanded. Come with me. Quickly. They ran through the prison corridors, past cells holding other prisoners, past guards who were too distracted by the chaos above to notice two women fleeing. The screams grew louder as they climbed terror, pain, death. They burst into the main level of the gathering grounds, and Eleanor's breath caught. The amphitheater was under attack, but not by rogues, by something worse. They emerged from the earth itself, shadow creatures, formless and writhing, like pieces of night that had learned to hate. They had no eyes, no mouths, but they screamed with voices that sounded like grinding bone. And wherever they touched, they left corruption stone turning black, plants withering, wolves falling with terror in their eyes. The alphas were fighting shifted into wolf form, using every ounce of their power. But their attacks passed through the shadow creatures like smoke. Teeth and claws were useless. Traditional power meant nothing, and in the center of it all, standing on the platform where Eleanor had been judged, was a figure wrapped in darkness so complete it hurt to look at directly. The Voidwalker, Addie whispered, terror in her voice. The ancient enemy the marked sealed away 1,000 years ago. Someone broke the seal. Let it free. Eleanor's eyes found Russ immediately. He was in the thick of battle, his massive black wolf tearing at shadows that reformed instantly. Drew was with him, protected by a circle of Blackridge wolves, but they were being overwhelmed. Wolves were dying. The darkness was consuming them, their screams cutting off abruptly as shadow swallowed light. Why did they want me imprisoned? Eleanor asked, though part of her already knew. Because the marked are the only ones who can fight the void. Silver flame is the opposite of shadow light made manifest. You're the weapon they feared most. Addie gripped her shoulders. But you have to embrace your power fully. No holding back. No fear. Everything the prophecy promised, you have to become it. Now, Eleanor looked at her burned wrists, at the scars from years of suppression, at the evidence of everything she'd endured. Then she looked at Drew, at Russ, at wolves dying, because she'd let herself be caged again. And something inside her, something that had been bending, breaking, barely holding together, finally snapped. Not into pieces. Into purpose. Get to safety, Eleanor said, her voice taking on that layered quality. Tell anyone who'll listen to fall back. This ends now. She didn't wait for Addie's response. She ran toward the chaos, toward the death, toward the very center of the darkness. Russ saw her first. His wolf's head whipped around, and even in animal form, she could see his shock, his relief, his terror. Eleanor jumped onto the platform, landing beside the Voidwalker. Up close, it was worse, a figure shaped like a man but made of absence. Of the spaces between stars. Of every nightmare that had ever whispered in the dark. You're free, it said, its voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. The little silver wolf, unchained at last. Have you come to die properly this time? No. Eleanor's hands burst into silver flame, not flickering, not hesitant, blazing. I've come to finish what my ancestors started. She thrust both hands forward, and silver fire exploded from her palms like a tidal wave. The Voidwalker stumbled back, actually stumbled, as the flames hit it. Where fire met shadow, the darkness screamed and recoiled. Impossible, it hissed. The marked are extinct. Dead. Gone. Looks like you missed one. Eleanor advanced, pouring more power into the flames. Her skin glowed silver, her eyes burned mercury bright, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what she was. She was glorious. The shadow creatures converged on her, dozens of them, trying to swarm and overwhelm. Eleanor spun, her flames expanding in a perfect circle, creating a barrier of light that the shadows couldn't cross. Alphas, she shouted, her voice carrying across the entire amphitheater. Fall back behind the light. It will protect you. For a moment, no one moved. They stared at her, this wolf they'd condemned, imprisoned, declared a threat now standing between them and annihilation. Then Russ shifted back to human form. You heard her. Everyone behind Eleanor. Now. The authority in his voice broke their paralysis. Alphas scrambled back, dragging wounded with them, retreating to the safety of Eleanor's silver flames. Even Thomas, bleeding, terrified, stumbled into the protected circle. Only Eleanor stood outside it, facing the Voidwalker alone. You can't win, the Voidwalker said. I am eternal. I am the darkness that existed before your moon, before your light, before anything dared to call itself alive. Maybe. Eleanor's flames grew hotter, brighter. But I'm the thing your darkness fears. I'm the light you couldn't extinguish. I'm every wolf you tried to break who stood back up, and I am done being afraid of you. She reached deep, deeper than she ever had before, past the conscious control, past the fear, past every wall she'd built to keep her power contained. She reached for the core of what she was, not just Eleanor Stevenson, damaged and doubting. She reached for the marked, for the bloodline, for every ancestor who'd fought this darkness before, and they answered. Silver light erupted from Eleanor's skin, so bright it turned night into day. The flames weren't just in her hands anymore, they covered her entire body, wreathed her like a second skin, blazed from her eyes and mouth and every pore. She was light made flesh, power made manifest, everything the prophecy had promised. I am Eleanor Stevenson, she said, her voice resonating with the voices of her ancestors, of every marked who'd come before. I am descended from the first wolves, the moon's chosen, the bridge between light and dark, and in the name of every innocent you've killed, every life you've corrupted, every wolf you've terrorized, I banish you. She thrust her hands toward the Voidwalker, and silver fire poured out in a column so intense it cracked the stone beneath her feet. The flame hit the darkness like a hurricane hitting a candle, absolute, overwhelming, undeniable. The Voidwalker screamed. Its shadow creatures dissolved, their screams cutting off as light consumed them. The corruption on the stones burned away, leaving clean marble, and the Voidwalker itself, the ancient enemy, the sealed evil, began to fracture. This isn't over, it shrieked as the flames tore it apart. I'll return. I'll always return. Darkness is eternal. So is light, Eleanor said, and I'll be waiting. One final surge of power, and the Voidwalker exploded into ash and shadow that dissolved in Eleanor's flames like snow in sunlight. Silence fell. Eleanor stood alone on the platform, still blazing with silver light, breathing hard. Around her, the gathering grounds lay in ruins, scorched, cracked, but clean. The darkness was gone, the shadows had fled, and every alpha in the Northern Territories was staring at her with awe and terror and dawning understanding. She'd saved them. All of them, even the ones who'd condemned her. Eleanor let the flames die slowly, pulling her power back under control. It was easier now, after everything. Like her power had needed that release, that full expression, to finally settle into something she could work with instead of against. When the last flame guttered out, she stood in simple human form, burned, bleeding, exhausted, but alive. Eleanor. Russ's voice, rough with emotion. She turned to find him standing at the edge of the platform, Drew in his arms in human form, now a small boy with dark hair and blue eyes, finally old enough to shift back after the trauma. Uncle Russ, Drew whispered, reaching for Eleanor. Is Ellie okay? I'm okay, sweetheart, Eleanor said, her voice hoarse. Just tired. Russ climbed onto the platform, Drew clinging to his shoulders. He stopped 3 feet away, like he was afraid to get closer, afraid she might disappear. You came back, he said. I couldn't leave you. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't let you die because I was too afraid to be what I am. You were never the threat. Craig Stevens stepped forward, his expression filled with regret. We let fear blind us. Let old lies convince us that power like yours was dangerous instead of necessary. He dropped to one knee. I was wrong. We were all wrong. And I'm sorry. One by one. Other alphas followed. Julian Dixon, Glenn Dalton, even young Charles, who'd voted against her without hesitation. All of them kneeling. All of them acknowledging what she'd done. Eleanor looked at Spencer Hayes. The head alpha stood apart, his expression unreadable. The council owes you a debt we can never repay, he said finally. You saved us when we didn't deserve saving. You proved every assumption we made about the Marked was false. He bowed, actually bowed. On behalf of all Northern Pax, I formally apologize for the injustice done to you, and I ask humbly that you consider remaining in these territories. As our guardian, our protector, our Marked. Eleanor's throat tightened. It was everything she'd wanted. Recognition. Acceptance. Proof that she wasn't wrong. But there was one person who hadn't knelt. One person who stood apart. His face twisted with fury and disbelief. Thomas. This is insane, he spat. You're really going to trust her? After one battle? She could be corrupted. She could be planning. Enough. Russ's voice cracked like a whip. You spent 12 years suppressing her, controlling her, making her believe she was a monster. And all that time, she was the only thing standing between us and the void. Your fear nearly cost us everything, Thomas. So I suggest you shut your mouth before I shut it for you. Thomas's face went red, but he fell silent. Eleanor walked to the edge of the platform, looking out at the assembled Alpha's wolves who'd feared her, judged her, imprisoned her, wolves she'd just saved. I'm not your guardian, she said quietly. I'm not your weapon or your shield or your convenient solution to darkness. I'm just Eleanor, a wolf who's tired of being told she's too much or not enough. She looked at Russ. But I'll stay. I'll help. Because despite everything, I believe we can build something better. Something where power isn't feared unless it's misused. Where wolves like me don't have to hide. We'll build it together, Craig said. With you. Not for you. As equals. Eleanor nodded slowly. Then she looked at Thomas. And you're going to step down as Alpha of Clearwater. The amphitheater went silent. Excuse me, Thomas snarled. You heard me. You abused your position, suppressed one of the Marked, and nearly caused the extinction of all wolf packs because you were too proud to admit you were wrong. Eleanor's voice was steel. I could kill you for what you did. The council would probably let me. But I won't. Because I'm not the monster you tried to make me. She stepped closer. But you will step down. You will let someone with actual compassion lead Clearwater. Or I will make sure every wolf in these territories knows exactly what you did to me. And trust me, after today, they'll believe me. Thomas looked around wildly, searching for support. But every Alpha looked away. Even his allies had abandoned him. You can't, he started. She can, Spencer said flatly. And she's right. You're unfit to lead. Pack law demands it after such egregious failure of duty. Thomas's face went from red to white. He opened his mouth, closed it, then turned and fled a broken man, his power and authority gone in an instant. Eleanor felt no satisfaction. Just exhaustion. She swayed, and immediately Russ was there, catching her, pulling her against his chest. I've got you, he murmured. I've got you. Drew wrapped his small arms around both of them. Don't leave again, Ellie. Please don't leave. I won't, sweetheart, I promise. Eleanor kissed the top of his head, then looked up at Russ. I'm sorry. For giving up. For letting them take me. Don't. Russ cupped her face in both hands. You did what you thought was right. You tried to protect me, and then you came back, and saved everyone. You have nothing to apologize for, Eleanor. Nothing. I love you, she whispered. I should have said it before. I should have. He kissed her, deep and desperate and full of everything they'd almost lost. The mate bond flared between them. So strong now it was visible silver light wrapping around both of them, sealing them together. When they finally broke apart, Eleanor was crying and laughing at the same time. Marry me, Russ said. Right now, today. I don't want to wait another second to call you mine. Yes, Eleanor said without hesitation. Yes to everything. Yes to you, to this, to building a better world together. Yes. Drew cheered. And despite the ruins around them, despite the death and destruction, the assembled Alphas began to applaud. Because today, they'd seen the darkness fall, and they'd seen the light rise to meet it. Eleanor Stevenson, once rejected, once condemned, once told she was too wrong to exist, had proven that sometimes the most broken things shine the brightest. And sometimes being different isn't a curse. It's exactly what the world needs. Chapter 9. The Moonlight Binding. 3 days after the battle, Eleanor stood in the Moonstone Circle once more. But this time, she wasn't alone. This time, she wasn't afraid. This time, she was getting married. The circle had been transformed. Someone, probably Addie with help from half of Blackridge Pack, had woven garlands of winter flowers through the ancient stones. White candles flickered in the snow, creating pools of warm light, and the wolves gathered weren't there to judge her. They were there to celebrate. Eleanor wore a simple white dress that Addie had somehow produced, with silver embroidery that caught the moonlight. Her hair was loose, falling in waves down her back, and around her throat hung a pendant Russ had given her that morning, a silver wolf howling at the moon. Ancient and beautiful. "You look nervous," Addie said, adjusting Eleanor's dress one more time. "Second thoughts? About marrying Russ?" "Never." Eleanor smiled. "Just overwhelmed. A week ago, these wolves wanted me imprisoned. Now they're here watching me become their queen. Not their queen, their equal." Addie squeezed her hand. "You made sure of that. The new council structure you proposed, giving the marked a formal voice, creating protections for wolves with unusual gifts. It's revolutionary, Eleanor. You're changing everything." "We're changing everything," Eleanor corrected. "I'm just the one who happened to have the power everyone was afraid of." Music started. Traditional wolf songs played on drums and flutes. Eleanor's signal. She took a deep breath and stepped into the circle. Russ stood at the altar, and the sight of him stole her breath. He wore formal black with silver accents, his hair pulled back, his amber eyes locked on her with such intensity it made her knees weak. Beside him stood Drew in miniature formal wear, holding a silver cord for the binding ceremony. Every step Eleanor took toward them felt like coming home. The gathered wolves, alphas, pack members, even some from Clearwater who'd defected after Thomas's removal, parted to let her through. And she saw faces she recognized. Craig Stevens, smiling with genuine warmth. Julian Dixon, nodding respectfully. Sandy from Clearwater, tears streaming down her face. And Javier and Wallace from Blackridge, grinning like proud older brothers. When Eleanor reached the altar, Russ took her hands. His were shaking slightly. "You're trembling," she whispered. "I'm terrified you'll realize you're too good for me and bolt," he murmured back. "Not a chance." Spencer Hayes stepped forward to officiate. The old alpha had aged 10 years in 3 days, but his voice was still strong. "We gather under the moon's light to witness the bonding of two souls," he began. Russ Mercer, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and Eleanor Stevenson, the marked first of her name, returned. Eleanor had argued against the title, but Spencer had insisted. "You need to be recognized as separate from any pack," he'd said, "as something beyond traditional hierarchy. Otherwise, wolves will try to control you through pack law." So she'd become first of her name, a position that had existed 1,000 years ago, reserved for the most powerful of the marked. It felt too big, too important. But looking at Russ, at Drew, at the wolves gathered, who were genuinely trying to build something better, Eleanor thought maybe she could grow into it. "Do you, Russ Mercer, take Eleanor Stevenson as your mate?" Spencer asked. "To stand beside her in all things, to honor her strength and support her through weakness, to choose her every day for the rest of your lives?" "I do." Russ's voice rang clear. "In front of the moon and every witness here, I choose Eleanor. Today, tomorrow, and every day after." Spencer turned to Eleanor. "And do you, Eleanor Stevenson, take Russ Mercer as your mate? To stand beside him in all things, to honor his strength and support him through weakness, to choose him every day for the rest of your lives?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I do. I choose him. I choose us. I choose the life we're going to build together." "Then let the binding begin." Drew stepped forward with the silver cord. Russ and Eleanor each took one end, wrapping it around their joined hands, the traditional symbol of two becoming one. But this ceremony had an extra element. Eleanor's silver flames ignited, wrapping around the cord, around their hands, blazing bright enough to light the entire circle. The gathered wolves gasped, but not in fear. In wonder. Because the flames weren't destructive, they were beautiful. They pulsed with the rhythm of two heartbeats becoming one, with the mate bond finally completing, with pure perfect love made visible. "By the power vested in me by the Northern Council, and under the moon's eternal witness, I declare you bonded." Spencer's voice was thick with emotion. Mates for life. Partners in all things. May your bond be strong, your love be fierce, and your days be long. Russ pulled Eleanor into a kiss that made the assembled wolves cheer. The silver flames blazed brighter, creating a dome of light around them, and Eleanor felt the mate bond snap into place, fully permanent, unbreakable, perfect. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing and crying at once. "I love you," Russ said against her lips. "My mate. My Eleanor. My home." "I love you," Eleanor replied. "My impossible, stubborn, wonderful wolf." Drew launched himself at both of them, wrapping his small arms around their legs. "Does this mean Ellie is my aunt now?" "It means Eleanor is family," Russ said, scooping the boy up. "Forever." The celebration that followed was unlike anything Eleanor had experienced. There was food, roasted meat, fresh bread, winter fruits, and music and dancing. Wolves from different packs mingled, barriers dropping as they celebrated not just a wedding but a new beginning. Craig Stevens approached Eleanor during a lull in the festivities. "I wanted to apologize again. Properly. Without an audience." "You already did," Eleanor said gently. "Not enough." His eyes were haunted. "I let fear make me a coward. I voted to imprison you because I was terrified of losing anyone else the way I lost my daughter. But fear isn't leadership. It's just fear. And I'm sorry." Eleanor took his hand. "Your daughter would want you to be brave. To choose hope over fear. To believe in possibilities instead of hiding from threats." She squeezed gently. "So be brave now. Help me build something better. Help me make sure no one else loses their children to darkness." Craig's eyes filled with tears. "I will. I promise." He wasn't the only one who sought her out. Throughout the evening, wolves approached, some to apologize, some to thank her, some just to see them marked up close without fear. And Eleanor received them all with grace, even when it was hard. Even when some of their words still stung, because this was part of choosing to stay. Part of choosing to fight for a better world instead of running from the one that had hurt her. "You're good at this," Russ murmured, pulling her aside during a particularly energetic dance. "At being a leader. At making people feel seen. I had a good teacher." Eleanor leaned into him. "You taught me that power doesn't have to mean domination. That strength can be gentle. You taught me that love isn't weakness." His arms wrapped around her waist. "That letting someone in doesn't mean losing yourself." They swayed together under the stars, the celebration continuing around them but feeling distant, separate. In this moment, there was only the two of them, mates, partners, home. "What happens now?" Eleanor asked softly. "After tonight? Now we live." Russ pressed a kiss to her temple. "We rebuild the territories. We train other wolves with unusual gifts. We find the remaining members of the resistance and bring them into the light. We raise Drew to be strong and kind. And we love each other until our last breath." "That sounds perfect." "It won't be easy. There will be wolves who still fear change, who resist what we're trying to build." "I know." Eleanor pulled back to look at him. "But we'll face it together. That's what mates do, right?" His smile was answer enough. The moon reached its peak overhead, full and bright, and as if summoned, every wolf present turned their faces upward. A howl began, one voice, then two, then dozens, until the entire circle sang to the moon. Eleanor felt her own wolf rise to join them. She tipped her head back and let the howl pour out, wild, free, joyous. Beside her, Russ's deeper voice harmonized with hers, and Drew's young howl added to the chorus. The sound echoed across the territories, carrying a message to every wolf who could hear. The marked had returned, the darkness had been defeated, and a new era had begun. Later that night, in the privacy of Russ's their chambers, Eleanor stood at the window watching the snowfall. "Having second thoughts?" Russ asked from the bed, where he'd been watching her with those intense amber eyes. "Just thinking." Eleanor turned to face him. "About how different my life is now compared to a month ago. About how close I came to giving up completely." "What changed?" "You, Drew, this place." She moved toward him. "Being seen for who I really am, instead of what I was afraid I might be." Russ pulled her onto the bed beside him. "You know what I see when I look at you?" "What?" "Everything." His hand cupped her cheek. "I see the woman who bled in the snow protecting a stranger's child. I see the wolf who stood against an alpha who'd spent years breaking her. I see the marked who faced the void and didn't flinch. But mostly, His thumb brushed across her lips. I see home. I see the person I was always meant to find. I see my mate. Eleanor kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it: love, gratitude, desire, promise. The mate bond sang between them, urging them closer, deeper, completely together. Show me, Eleanor whispered against his lips. Show me what forever feels like. And Russ did. Hours later, wrapped in blankets, and each other, Eleanor traced the scars on Russ's chest. Evidence of a life lived in battle, in survival, in constant vigilance. Tell me something, she said softly. Something true that you've never told anyone else. Russ was quiet for a long moment. Then, I was afraid I'd die alone. That being Alpha King meant being solitary. That no one would ever see past the power to the person underneath. His arms tightened around her. And then I found you bleeding in the snow. And my wolf knew instantly that everything I'd believed about being alone was wrong. That you were what I'd been missing. What I'd been searching for. Eleanor's throat tightened. I was afraid I'd live alone. That being different meant being isolated. That no one would ever accept me fully, power and flaws and fears and all. She pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. And then you carried me through a storm. Held me through nightmares. And looked at my silver flames like they were beautiful instead of terrifying. You showed me that being different doesn't mean being alone. We saved each other, Russ said. Yeah. Eleanor smiled. We did. They lay in comfortable silence, listening to the wind outside, to the distant sounds of the pack settling for the night. Somewhere down the hall, Drew was sleeping peacefully for the first time since losing his mother. They were a family now. Broken pieces that had found each other and decided to make something whole. Eleanor? Russ's voice was drowsy. Thank you. For what? For being brave. For coming back. For choosing me. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. For being exactly who you are. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you for seeing me. For believing I was worth fighting for. For loving me even when I didn't love myself. Always. His breathing deepened, sleep pulling him under. Always, Eleanor. For the rest of our lives. Eleanor stayed awake a little longer, watching her mate sleep, feeling the peace of belonging settle into her bones. She thought about the girl she'd been a month ago, afraid, suppressed, convinced she was too broken to deserve happiness. She thought about everything that had changed, everything she'd survived, everything she'd become. And she thought about the future stretching ahead, challenges to face, wolves to protect, a world to reshape, and a mate to love through all of it. The moon shone through the window, bathing them both in silver light. And for the first time in her entire life, Eleanor Stevenson felt complete. Not because someone else had fixed her, but because she'd finally learned the truth her mother had tried to teach her years ago. She'd never been broken. She'd just been becoming. And now, finally, she'd arrived. Chapter 10. 6 months of freedom. 6 months later, Eleanor stood at the edge of the training grounds, watching the morning sun paint the Blackridge territory in shades of gold and amber. Spring had arrived, melting the winter snow and coaxing new life from the earth. Everything felt fresh, hopeful, alive with possibility, much like Eleanor herself. Again, she called to the group of young wolves assembled before her. And this time, don't hold back. Your power isn't something to fear, it's something to understand. 10 wolves, ages ranging from 13 to 20, faced her with varying degrees of nervousness and excitement. These were the ones who'd been hidden, suppressed, told they were wrong because their gifts didn't fit traditional molds. A girl with eyes that could see through solid stone. A boy who could commune with plants. Another who could manipulate water. A young woman whose wolf was pure white with wings, actual wings. All of them different. All of them extraordinary. All of them learning that different didn't mean damaged. The winged wolf Gina Valentine from the former Clearwater pack shifted and took flight, her movements still awkward but improving daily. Eleanor watched with pride as the girl circled overhead, her confidence growing with each wing beat. Beautiful, Eleanor called up to her. But remember, power without control is just chaos. Bring it in gently. Gina landed with more grace than last week, shifting back with a huge grin. I didn't crash this time. Progress. Eleanor smiled. Okay, everyone. That's enough for today. Rest, hydrate. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. As the students dispersed, chattering excitedly, Russ approached from the main house. He'd been in meetings all morning, council business, territory negotiations, the endless work of being Alpha King. But when he looked at Eleanor, All that stress melted into pure warmth. "How'd they do?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Gina didn't crash." "That's a win." Eleanor leaned back against his chest. "And the boy who talks to plants? Wendell, he managed to accelerate a seed's growth by 3 weeks in under an hour. They're all getting stronger, more confident. Because they have you." Russ pressed a kiss to her neck. "A teacher who understands what it's like to be different. Who doesn't try to make them smaller." Eleanor turned in his arms. "We did good, didn't we, creating this place? We did extraordinary." His amber eyes held nothing but pride. "The sanctuary isn't just a training ground, Eleanor. It's proof that the old ways were wrong. That wolves with unusual gifts deserve nurturing, not punishment. The sanctuary, that's what they'd named it. A school, a refuge, a home for wolves who didn't fit the traditional mold. It had started with just 5 students 3 months ago. Now they had 10, with 5 more arriving next week from southern territories. Word was spreading. The Marked had returned, and she was building something revolutionary. "Mama, Ellie," Drew's voice rang across the grounds. The 5-year-old came racing toward them, his dark hair flying, his blue eyes bright with excitement. "Mama Ellie, look what Uncle Javier taught me." He shifted mid-run, a perfect, controlled transformation, and bounded up to them as a small gray wolf, yipping proudly. "That was perfect, sweetheart." Eleanor knelt to ruffle his fur. "So smooth. You've been practicing." Drew shifted back, throwing his arms around her neck. "Uncle Javier says I'm going to be as strong as Uncle Russ one day. Maybe stronger. I don't doubt it." Eleanor hugged him tight, breathing in his little boy-scent sunshine and grass and home. "But remember, strength isn't just about power. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves." Drew finished dutifully. "And being brave even when you're scared. And choosing kindness over cruelty. I know, Mama Ellie. You tell me every day. Because it's important." Eleanor kissed his forehead. "Now go wash up for lunch. And tell Addie we'll have 12 for the meal Gina and Wendell are staying." Drew raced off, his energy seemingly endless. Eleanor watched him go, her heart so full it almost hurt. "He called you Mama," Russ said softly. "He's been doing that for a month now." Eleanor's voice was thick with emotion. "I didn't correct him. Is that okay?" "It's perfect." Russ pulled her close. "Olivia would have loved you, would have loved seeing how you care for him, how you're giving him the childhood she wanted for him, safe, happy, free." Eleanor swallowed hard. They'd erected a memorial for Olivia in the heart of Blackridge territory, a beautiful stone carved with her name, and the words, "Fierce Mother, Beloved Sister, Eternal Guardian." Drew visited it weekly, telling his mother stories about his life, his training, his new mama who had silver flames. "I wish I could have known her," Eleanor said. "You do know her. You see her every time Drew laughs. Every time he shows compassion. Every time he stands up for someone weaker." Russ's smile was sad but genuine. "She lives on in him, and in the way you're raising him. That's enough." They stood together, watching their territory know, their home bustling with life. In the distance, Javier was running a combat training session with senior warriors. Addie was tending the herb gardens that Eleanor had helped her expand. Wallace was overseeing repairs on the eastern border fence. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone belonged. "The council meets again next week," Russ said. "Craig wants to propose expanding the sanctuary model to other territories. And Julian has 3 more wolves with unusual gifts who need placement. We'll make room." Eleanor had learned to say we instead of I. Had learned that accepting help wasn't weakness. What about Thomas? Any word? After being stripped of his position, Thomas had disappeared. Rumor said he'd gone south, far from the northern territories, to live out his days in obscurity. Some wolves thought he should have been executed for his crimes. Eleanor had argued for mercy, not because she forgave him, but because she refused to become the kind of leader who ruled through fear and violence. Nothing. And honestly, Russ's jaw tightened. "I'm fine with that. As long as he stays away from you, away from our pack. I don't care where he rots." Eleanor understood the sentiment, even if she couldn't quite share the venom. Thomas had broken something in her that had taken months to heal, but she'd learned that healing didn't require forgiveness. It just required choosing to move forward. "Come on," she said, tugging Russ toward the house. "Lunch is waiting, and I'm starving." They walked hand in hand through the territory, greeting pack members who smiled and nodded. No one bowed. Eleanor had made that rule clear. She wasn't their superior. She was their equal. Just with different gifts. At the main house, chaos reigned. Drew was already at the table, telling Addie an elaborate story involving Uncle Javier, 3 chickens, and a training dummy that had apparently come to life. Gina and Wendell sat nearby, laughing at his animated gestures. Javier emerged from the kitchen carrying a massive pot of stew. Ellie, perfect timing. Tell Drew that training dummies do not, in fact, come alive. They might if Wendell accidentally talks to them, Eleanor said seriously, making Wendell sputter with laughter. This was what Eleanor had been missing her entire life. Not just acceptance, belonging. Not just safety, home. Not just survival, family. After lunch, while Drew napped, and the students returned to their studies, Eleanor and Russ took a walk to the Moonstone Circle. It had become their ritual. Once a week, they'd visit the sacred space where they'd been married, where Eleanor had first accepted her destiny. The stones no longer glowed constantly, but they pulsed with faint light whenever Eleanor approached. Like they recognized her. Like they were grateful she'd answered their call. "I've been thinking," Russ said as they sat on the altar stone, the same place where Eleanor had seen the prophecy carved. "About expanding our territory, not through conquest, through alliance. If we can convince more packs to join the new council model, to accept wolves with unusual gifts, we could create something truly revolutionary. A united territory," Eleanor mused. "Not ruled by fear or dominance but by cooperation. Exactly, with you as the bridge. The marked who proved that power doesn't have to corrupt." He took her hand. "What do you think?" Eleanor looked at the carved stones, at the ancient symbols that had survived 1,000 years of turmoil. She thought about the students at the sanctuary, about Drew growing up free and loved. About all the wolves who were still hiding their gifts because they were afraid. "I think," she said slowly, "that we should try. Not because the prophecy demands it. Not because we're supposed to. But because it's the right thing to do. That's my girl." Russ pulled her close. "Always choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. I learned from the best." They sat in comfortable silence, watching clouds drift across the spring sky. Eleanor felt her power humming beneath her skin, always present now, but no longer frightening. She'd learned to live with it, to channel it, to let it be part of her without letting it define her completely. "Eleanor?" Russ's voice was tentative. "There's something I need to tell you." Her heart stuttered. "What?" "Addie thinks, well, she's almost certain that you're pregnant." The world stopped. Eleanor turned to stare at him, her mind reeling. "What?" "Your scent's been different for about 2 weeks. Sweeter. And you've been more tired than usual, more emotional." His hand moved to her stomach, gentle, reverent. "Addie's rarely wrong about these things. Pregnant. She might be pregnant. With Russ's child." Eleanor's hand covered his on her stomach. "I don't know what to say." "Say you're happy." His eyes searched hers, vulnerable in a way he rarely allowed. "Say this is what you want, because God's, Eleanor, I want it. Want to see you round with our child. Want to raise pups with you. Want to build a family that's as extraordinary as you are." Tears spilled down Eleanor's cheeks. "Yes. Yes, I'm happy. Yes, I want this. I want everything with you." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Eleanor felt the future unfold before them, not the prophecy's future, but their own. Children to raise, students to teach, a world to reshape, and love to sustain them through all of it. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and laughing. "We should probably confirm before we tell everyone," Eleanor said practically, even as her hand stayed protectively over her stomach. "But if it's true, oh gods, Russ. We're going to have a baby. We're going to have a baby," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "A little wolf who'll grow up knowing they're loved, wanted, accepted completely." His smile turned wicked. "A little wolf who'll probably inherit your silver flames and my stubborn streak and make our lives beautifully chaotic. I can't wait." They walked back to the main house hand in hand, the spring sun warm on their faces, hope blooming in their chests, like the flowers beginning to dot the landscape. Eleanor thought about the girl she'd been afraid, hidden, convinced she was too broken for happiness. And she thought about the woman she'd become, powerful, loved, building something that would outlast her lifetime. The transformation hadn't been easy. She bore scars, physical and emotional, from everything she'd endured. But those scars were proof of survival, of resilience, of refusing to let cruelty define her. She'd been told she was cursed, unnatural, wrong, but she'd learned the truth. She was blessed, extraordinary, exactly right. The moon would rise tonight, full and bright, and Eleanor would howl to it not in loneliness or pain, but in pure, unbridled joy. Because she'd found her pack, her mate, her purpose, her home, and that was worth every moment of darkness she'd walked through to get here. The girl who'd bled in the snow protecting a stranger's child had become the woman who'd reshaped the world for all children. The outcast had become the bridge. The monster had become the savior. And Eleanor Stevenson, the marked first of her name, mate to the Alpha King, mother to Drew and possibly a child of her own, had finally found where she belonged. In the light. In the love. In the life she'd fought so hard to claim. And it was more beautiful than any prophecy could have predicted. Chapter 11. A message of hope. Thank you. Thank you for staying with Eleanor through every painful moment, every triumph, every heartbreak and healing. Thank you for believing she deserved love even when she couldn't believe it herself. Thank you for walking beside her through the snow and the flames and the darkness and finally into the light. Maybe you've felt like Eleanor. Maybe you've been told you're too much or not enough. Maybe you've spent years hiding pieces of yourself, suppressing your gifts, making yourself smaller just to survive in spaces that never really wanted you. Maybe you know what it's like to be judged for being different. If that's you, if any part of Eleanor's story resonated in your bones, I want you to hear something important. You are not too much. You are not broken. You are not wrong. You're just becoming. And the things you've been told to hide? Those are often the very things the world needs most. Your sensitivity, your power, your refusal to fit into boxes that were never designed to hold your magnificence, those aren't flaws, they're gifts. Eleanor's story teaches us that transformation doesn't happen because someone else fixes us. It happens when we finally see ourselves clearly, scars, strengths, fears, and fire, and decide we're worth fighting for. It happens when we find people who see us fully and love us anyway. It happens when we stop apologizing for taking up space and start claiming it boldly. The wolves who feared Eleanor weren't afraid of her power. They were afraid of what her power represented: change, possibility, the uncomfortable truth that their old ways were built on fear instead of wisdom. But Eleanor didn't let their fear define her. And neither should you. So here's my question for you. What would you do if you stopped being afraid? What power would you claim? What dreams would you chase? What version of yourself would you become if you truly believed you were worthy of love, respect, and a place in this world? Think about it. And if Eleanor's journey moved you, if you found yourself rooting for her, crying with her, celebrating her victories, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What moment resonated most with you? Was it when she first stood up to Thomas? When Russ held her through her nightmares? When she faced the void and didn't flinch? When she finally accepted that she deserved happiness? Or maybe you have your own story, your own moment when you stopped hiding and started becoming. Share it. Your words might be exactly what another person needs to hear to take their first brave step. And if you want more stories like this, stories about outcasts who become legends, about monsters who turn out to be heroes, about love that sees past the surface to the soul, subscribe to this channel. Because here, we tell stories about the ones who don't fit. The ones who were told they're too different, too powerful, too broken. The ones who learned that being different isn't a curse, it's a calling. We tell stories about silver flames and second chances. About wolves who howl at the moon not in loneliness but in joy. About finding your pack, even when the whole world tells you you'll never belong. If that speaks to you, if Eleanor's story reminded you that you're not alone in feeling like you don't quite fit, then hit that subscribe button. Ring the notification bell, because there are more stories coming. More outcasts finding their power. More broken hearts learning to heal. More proof that sometimes the most extraordinary lives begin the moment we stop pretending to be ordinary. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with the same truth that Eleanor discovered. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. You don't have to have everything figured out. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. You just have to be brave enough to let yourself be seen. All of you, the light and the shadow, the strength and the vulnerability, the silver flames and the scars they leave behind. Because when you stop hiding, when you step into your full power and claim your space in this world, something magical happens. You inspire others to do the same. You become the permission slip someone else needs to stop shrinking. You prove that different isn't just okay, it's essential. Eleanor was never meant to fit into Clearwater's boxes. She was meant to break them open and show everyone what exists beyond the walls of fear. And maybe, just maybe, you're meant to do the same. So go forward knowing this. Your power is not your punishment. Your difference is not your damage. Your journey is not your judgment. You are exactly who you're meant to be. And the world is waiting for you to believe it. Until the next story finds us, remember, the moon doesn't apologize for shining. The stars don't hide their light, and neither should you. You are seen. You are valued. You are worthy. Always. With love and silver flames. This is your reminder that you're not too much, you're exactly enough. And your story? It's just beginning.